Good morning, colleagues, and let me start by thanking our PEO, Date Masemula, for putting up this event under his leadership and his management team. Thank you, Date Masemula. We appreciate this event and for putting the time to put it together. And thanks also for the session moderator. Appreciate your time. I'm going to acknowledge, before I continue, as you already indicated, my general manager, Mqobi is here with us today. She's going to deliver the keynote address. I'm hoping that she will touch on some of the key ideas behind this program. Started under her, and she would bench unless she disagrees. She's a brainchild, so this is her brainchild. I hope she'll confirm and agree with that. This also, before I continue, let me acknowledge and thank the presenters who have been outlined to you for agreeing to be part of this. The exercise. This is part of our national thought leadership program. The idea is basically, it's straightforward, to identify thought leaders. These are people who are leaders in their expertise areas, in their field of expertise, who have the knowledge and the understanding, and they've put the time to develop expertise around these areas. And we want to tap into their knowledge and share it with us. We are basically, it's both us tapping into their knowledge, but we also throw a challenge to them to share with us what they know, what they understand. They are leaders. If somebody is a leader, we expect them to lead. And this is a platform that we provide for them to lead us in their areas of expertise. And we want them to do more than just leaders, be more than just leaders, to challenge us and put innovative ideas in some of the subjects that we think about, and bring some unique angles and fresh thinking around these subjects. So as a leader, it sounds simple, but it's a challenge. It's a burden, because we want you to come with innovative ideas, challenge us, and show us that you have something we don't know, something we haven't thought about, the angles that we haven't thought about in the subject area that you'll be presenting on, so that when we leave here, we know that we've gained something. The IEC seeks to be a learning organization. We don't presume to know everything. Some of our work can do with inputs from outsiders, people who think outside of the box that we exist in. And we welcome those fresh ideas to help us understand even better our mandate and some of the challenges that we have to face as an organization. So this is the challenge. This is a thought leadership program where we want you to bring something new on the table. And it's not just for us, because the audience is much larger than this. Some of these events, thought leadership events, are placed on our social media platforms. So the audience that's much wider than who we have today will have exposure to this. So you'll be educating the nation. You'll be coming with broad ideas and putting them before the nation, not just the IEC, not just the audience in this room. We would like to use those ideas to reflect on our work, make it better as we go forward. We progress, or we improve through these learnerships and sort of these thought leadership programs. And what you share with us expands. Knowledge or information is the only product. This is not an original line from me. I heard this from somewhere else. Knowledge is the only thing that expands in volume when you share. Unlike other properties or other things that you share and they decrease in volume, knowledge increases as you share it. So we hope to contribute to the stock of knowledge through what we are doing today. The IEC seeks to contribute to the strengthening of our electoral democracy by contributing not just technical election management skills, but knowledge and understanding of the work that we do, that through these thought leadership programs, South Africans would understand some of the challenges we face, and the fact that we have leaders, people with knowledge, skills, and understanding who are willing to put that at our exposure or expose it to some of our stakeholders, and in that way help South Africa progress as an electoral democracy. So I'm going to end here and hope that after this, our exchanges would have enriched the IEC a lot more than we hoped for. Thanks.
Thank you, Dr. Rapo. Today is not just a conversation, it is a commitment to listen, to learn, to collaborate, and to ensure that the energy, the creativity, and the expectations of youth becomes pillar of our evolving democracy. On that note, allow me to introduce Ms. Mqobi, our General Manager for Civic Education, Research and Knowledge Management. She will deliver the keynote address and help us anchor our reflections on the role of young people in democratic transformation. Her passion of empowering informed participation has been a driving force behind our civic education. Mqobi.
Thank you so much. Good morning, everybody. Good morning and welcome once again to our Thought Leadership Seminar. Thank you to P.O. Masemola for organizing and for always being very enthusiastic when it comes to engaging platforms such as this. And I'm happy that we have some young faces in the room. I'm very keen to meet Ntsako because she came up in my sort of trying to write up this keynote, which I think is being played up too much. So please just manage your expectations. I think my role is really to sort of turn the soil so that our panelists and the speakers that we have invited are able to plant seeds that you will be able to leave here with today and grow. Because anything that remains in this room will not be of value, as Dr. Rapo has said. Knowledge is meant to expand not just ourselves, but the communities that we come from and the communities that we serve. As I have been introduced, my name is Mqobi, and I and colleagues at the IEC are responsible for ensuring that we reach out to South Africans to educate, to inform, but also to empower them to participate meaningfully in elections, but in democracy overall. And the topic that has been selected today around addressing apathy and turning that into agency, especially when it comes to young people, is one that is very important for us as the IEC. Why? Because young people are the least represented on the voters' roll and the ones that we do not see in great numbers even on voting day. So it really gives me great pleasure to have been part of today's program because we're not here just to gather and to talk about apathy and young people and lamenting young people not participating in elections. I hope today we also come up with solutions and co-create some of these solutions with the young people in the room in order to ensure that we increase and we inspire participation in elections. As we are also in the mode of preparing for the upcoming local government elections, we do so in a society where over 60% of our population is young people. And I like to bring this statistic up a lot in any conversation or any speaking engagements because I think we really forget as young people, and I say we, you can see I'm throwing myself in there. You forget the power that you are actually sitting on and the power to do some really positive things for the future that you want to see for yourselves in this country. And I love how with the topic for today, we have combined the use of technology, of also traditional spaces, and how those can support democracy. Because young people are digitally fluent, much more digitally fluent than our parents and our grandparents. They're not much more, but they're also socially conscious in the context of the issues that they face today and are expressive about the future that they want to see for themselves. But paradoxically, as I have said, it's also a generation that is not fully coming out when it matters. And it does matter that they are not sufficiently on the voters' roll, and it does matter that they are not voting in the numbers that speak to the demographics of this country. So our question here today is not why are young people apathetic? It is how do we make democracy relevant, responsive, and reflective of their world? That is the question. And I believe once we begin to answer that, how do we make it relevant, responsive, and reflective to their world? Then we bring meaning into their role and their ownership of democracy and the future. Because even in elections, we're deciding today for something that is still to come. When we are discussing policies, we're discussing today and developing policies that will impact our future. So it is important to involve and ensure those that are here today in the context that they are in are able to reflect and ensure that democracy is speaking to their own values and where they would like to see themselves. Our democracy is evolving, and technology is also propelling us to evolve and change the ways and the platforms in which we are having conversations, but also engaging in civic participation. It has expanded from people queuing at voting stations and has included hashtags, podcasts, live streaming, as we are doing at an event such as today, but also digital petitions. Those are the different ways in which society is now actively participating in elections. Today's young citizens are able to register online. As you know, as the IEC, we have online registration for convenience, but also to show that we are adopting technology as a future-forward election management body. Young people are debating policies on social media and are mobilizing through WhatsApp. And we also, as the IEC, have a WhatsApp platform as well, because we, as I said, have to be and meet young people where they are. Our responsibility as the IEC is to ensure that we are in spaces where these devices, where learners and students at schools and in tertiary institutions, at music festivals, in the arts, on social media platforms, and we are converting awareness into action. We are converting those clicks on social media into commitments to participate. And we're taking conversations like we're having today out of just being conversations, but into voting, which is the desired outcome. And that's precisely the vision behind this seminar, because we need to challenge ourselves to go beyond just physical interactions and to utilize the platforms that are available to us in service of democratic ownership. However, digital platforms have also brought with them some challenges. And I think we're all familiar with mis and disinformation in these spaces. And truth, trust, and credibility are very valuable currencies when it comes to the digital space, because news and information spreads like wildfire. So it is important that as part of our civic education, we are including in our programs promoting awareness and how young people can check fake news and what are the things that they can look out for to ensure that the information they are consuming, receiving, but also sharing is credible, it is trustworthy, and promotes the values of good democracy. What we're also trying to say is that democracy is not something that just lives during elections. So it's not an event that we associate just with elections, but it lives in our everyday choices, our conversations, and our community action. and moments where we have seen community mobilization through hashtags on social media, etc., show us that democracy also happens in stages and it is a journey. So it's not just an event, it is a journey that we must all participate in, but also harness the energy that we see on these digital spaces into lasting engagement. So we don't just want fleeting hashtag conversations on digital platforms. It must translate into commitment, but also lasting action, so that on voting day, we're able to see the energy that we see in between elections and on conversations that intrigue, especially young people. We believe that participation must begin early, and that's why our civic education programs begin from school and include all sectors of society. We do this through our schools democracy program. We also have the tertiary institutions program, where we visit schools and campuses to conduct civic education sessions. But we have also been training a program where we're piloting students on campuses to also become democracy champions. And that program has proven very, very effective from a peer-to-peer learning perspective, and is something that we would like to grow as we build up to the elections. We also have partnership with the Department of Basic Education, and for the first time this year at their RCL Leadership Summit, we were part of their voting for a national representation of RCL students in the country, the very first of its kind. And we have seen that young group of learners really thrive, participating at the national dialogue, for instance, but also giving them opportunity for them to really see that, as I said, democracy is an everyday lived thing. It doesn't belong to the IEC. It doesn't belong to anybody else. It is something that belongs to all of us who are citizens in South Africa, and must remember that the right to vote is constitutionally given and guaranteed, and we cannot take it for granted. However, not any one single institution can be the one that must carry forward the duty for civic education. Yes, as the IEC, it is our mandate, which we fulfill through various platforms, including one such as this. But collaboration is the true multiplier. And it is important that we have individuals and organizations such as yourselves also playing their role in ensuring that young people and our greater community at large is also informed, educated, but also committed to playing their role when it comes to democracy. One way, or some of the ways as well, because we really believe, again, in meeting young people where they are, you really have to entice them with the things that interest them. So involving yourselves in the arts, we've got a play called Democracy on Stage that travels around the country, interesting young people through street theater to engage in conversations, and conversations that affect them. So we want them to be the storytellers of the democracy that they live in, so that we really encourage ownership and true and consistent participation when it comes to young people in elections. So as we prepare for the local government elections that will be coming up from 2026, we really want to recognize that this is not just a logical milestone that as South Africans we participate in every few years, but it is an affirming moment in democracy, where we as citizens can show up for ourselves and show up for our country. The youth of South Africa hold the key to unlocking voter participation and innovation, and that is precisely what our democracy needs. To every young people present here in this room and listening or watching online, your vote is an investment in your future. Each registration, each ballot paper that you mark, each civic act is a declaration that I am here and that I matter. The future is not waiting on you to decide if you will be part of it. The game is being played whether you decide to be on the pitch or not. So do not bench yourself when you have the right to be a player. The future is already here. Let us make sure that it carries your voice, your vision, and your vote. Thank you so much.
Young leaders, after this keynote address, you now understand why you are here. I promise you that after this session, you will be able to share what you have learned. You will be able to answer the questions such as, why should I participate? Why is democracy relevant? Remember, your participation is key in all democratic processes of South Africa, including registering to vote and ultimately voting. Thank you, Mesibanda. We are now moving into the second session on our program. I invite Dr. Thokozani Chilenga-Butao and Mr. Mudibe Mudiba to join us on stage. As they do that, allow me to introduce Ntate Clement Ntlailani, who is the Regional Outreach Officer from the capital city, the city of Tshwane, who will guide the session. Ntate Ntlailani.
Thank you very much, our host facilitator, Megwala. Ladies and gentlemen, good morning. Whilst I stand on the protocol that is already established, let me acknowledge our PO, the provincial head of Gauteng Province, who's gracing this occasion. Let me also acknowledge Memwahisi Letlaku, who is the General Manager for Civic Education, Research and Knowledge Management, including Dr. Rapo, who's also the Manager within Outreach. Stakeholders that are represented here, including our online community, colleagues, ladies and gentlemen, I greet you. I have a privilege of facilitating this brief session, and the session will focus on two aspects, and those will be exploring, my apologies, those will be dealing with drivers of youth voter participation and also the challenges of misinformation to electoral integrity. Dr. Martin Luther Jr. quotes that our lives begin to end the day we become silent about things that matters. And I believe that quote would resonate with the apathy that we are experiencing within democratic space in our country. We have two panel members who will both separately deal with a different topic as I indicated above. Without further ado, I'm going to introduce the first speaker, who would be dealing with the drivers of youth voter apathy in transitional and consolidating democracies. An examination into hybrid platforms across the globe to mitigate youth voter apathy and agitate for full youth voter participation in time for the 2026 local government elections. Ladies and gentlemen, Dr. Thokozani Chilenga-Butao, who completed her PhD in political studies in 2019 under the Pari and P. Seta scholarship. Her PhD thesis focuses on whether Section 100 intervention as enshrined in South Africa's constitution, are useful for the development and problem-solving capacities of provincial departments in South Africa, specifically provincial education departments. She undertook fieldwork in the Limpopo and Eastern Cape Province Education Department, which were subject to Section 100 interventions, and that was between 2011 to 2015. Dr. Thokozani's general research interests are decentralization, federalism, especially as processes of state formation, public administration, public policy, and also education governance. She's currently a lecturer in the Department of Political Studies at the Wits University and works as a research associate for PARI, which is the Public Affairs Research Institution on educational program. Ladies and gentlemen, help me welcome Dr. Thokozani Chilenga-Butao.
Thank you. Should I come forward?
Over to you.
Okay, should I come to the
Yes,
podium?
please.
Okay,
The floor is yours.
thank you. Thank you. Good morning, everyone. I'll say all protocol observed because I love your institution, the Electoral Commission. It is an honor to be standing before you, as well as your audience online and those who will catch up with this presentation. I will be presenting on mostly the drivers of youth voter apathy youth voter apathy in transitional and consolidating democracies, to give you a context of who you are dealing with when you are looking at youth voter apathy, the issues that matter to them, as well as the role of the IEC in driving youth voter registration and participation. I do have a presentation. Can I go to it? Okay. So the first thing that you probably know is that our participation in elections as a country is quite low. As you can see from this graphic released by Ipsos in conjunction with ENCA, in 2021, only a third of all voters in South Africa determined the outcomes of those elections, right? And if we look at youth in the 18 to 24 category, only 6% of youth actually voted, right? Maybe more registered to vote, but in the end, those who voted were 6%. This is worrying at the local government or in the local government sphere, because this is where not only we interact with government, but where youth also interact with government. It's the closest level to us. Whether it's service delivery, whether it is through municipalities and their functions, this is the coalface of governance, right? But in the context of how many of us actually show up to vote, register to vote, make sure we are in the right ward, etc., there is a larger problem which hopefully over time we can deal with. If we capture youth now and going forward, then of course it means in the 25 to 75 category or age group, these numbers over time should increase. So I'm going to start with some basics, some of which you already know. So what is youth voter apathy? Recent global experiences in youth voter apathy, because this matters, right? It's not only youth in South Africa, but youth across the globe who are not engaging with electoral processes. They might be participating politically in different spaces, but they're not engaging with electoral processes. The reasons for youth voter apathy, the effectiveness of hybrid platforms, and then suggestions on your role as the IEC. Youth voter apathy, of course, is a lack of engagement in electoral processes, evidenced by low voter registration and low voter turnout. In our country, youth is defined as 18 to 35. Many of us in this room are comfortably over 35. That's okay. But there is a whole segment of the population that is 18 to 35, and globally, youth is the 18 to 24 category. The reason why I emphasize this is that, as you'll see in the red circle, you are trying to capture more or a larger segment of the population than what is usually captured globally in the 18 to 24 category. What that means is that you are dealing with a difference in cohorts, as well as the differences in education, life stages, life expectations, life experiences, etc., right? We've all heard about how globally different age groups are categorized. A lot of us might be boomers or millennials, but when we look at younger generations, the categories are getting smaller and being defined, in ways that we might struggle to keep up with, but which it's important that we do. So you'll see that globally we have a Gen Z generation born between 1996 and 2010. These are what we would refer to as born frees, right? Born in our democratic era. We might also call them AMA2Ks. And they are anyone between the ages of 15 to 29. So as the IEC, you've already made strides to get them to register to vote, or you are about to if they are 15, turning 16, 17 in the next few years. Then there's Generation Alpha, which is born after 2010, so leaving the 15 age group to those who are 1 year old. I say this not to scare us, but to just emphasize that the issues that we might be tackling now with born frees will change in the next few years as Generation Alpha then becomes, part of the electorate. Again, I'd like to emphasize that youth voter apathy is a global phenomenon, right? If we look at different countries across the globe, and I've selected recent examples, in the US, in last year's elections, age, education, race or ethnicity, and family income all contributed to voter turnout, right? More youth, more university graduates, and more racial and ethnic minorities voted in the 2024 US election than the 2020 election. I personally don't like narratives about how education affects people's ability to participate, register to vote, but unfortunately, it's a fact that higher education levels, sometimes higher income levels, will affect whether or not people show up to vote. As the IEC, I see that you sometimes have registration drives on university campuses, and this is where you're hoping to capture, youth who are educated or getting educated, and so you yourselves will know that education does affect whether people register to vote or not. If we look at France, Germany, and the UK, young people are less likely to vote, but they're less likely, quote unquote, is between 55 to 72% turnout compared to our 6%. And I'm sure we can agree that we have probably more pressing problems compared to their first world problems, right? So we have to get from that 6% to higher, right? An interesting fact that I came across is that in the US, youth who are on social media are less likely to vote in elections. So when we're considering hybrid platforms and we're considering online presence, online mechanisms, social media, using celebrities or influencers, we must be careful. It must be driven by facts that you have or research that you've done before you assume that you're going to capture people on social media through a presence, a strong online presence there, which I'll also get into. On the other hand, alongside voter apathy, there is high youth political participation in parts of the globe. If we look at Kenya and we remember last year, there were the Gen Z protests, which literally blocked the government's finance bill from going through. And that finance bill was going to exponentially increase the cost of living in that country. So youth are participating in politics. They might not be voting or registering to vote, but they are still participating in politics in one way or another. In Nepal, a few weeks ago, if not about a month, 6 weeks ago, youth took to the streets, and I don't know if you saw the story. The reason why they did is because of government wanting to shut down the internet, shut down WhatsApp, to prevent their dissent and their protests. And they protested to the point that the Prime Minister and other leaders left the country, and they burnt down Parliament. Interestingly, a few days after they did that, they went back onto the streets and started cleaning up and painting what they had destroyed, right? Before the new Prime Minister was sworn in. So we also need to get away from ideas about how youth outrage will lead to destruction, but somehow not development of democracy, okay? And then finally, in terms of youth voter apathy versus political participation, one outlier that I found is that in a country like Australia, where voting is mandatory for every citizen above the age of 18, youth will show up to vote because they have to vote, but they'll often spoil their ballots. They don't identify with certain political parties, and they don't feel that politics or political processes are delivering for them in the way that they expect or that they've asked, right? So even if we have mandatory voting, which will increase voter turnout, voter registration, it doesn't mean that young people will be fully engaged with that process. On the screen is just some of the evidence that we've discussed, which you can look at. I'll share the presentation with you, just dealing with the fact that whether your youth voter turnout is 6% or 55% or 72%, the youth voter apathy issue remains in different countries, right? What are the reasons for youth voter apathy? And here I've grouped both the South African and African experience together because there are a lot of similarities. Importantly, Afrobarometer starts by warning us that unemployment is one of the most important problems that African youth want their governments to address. As the IEC, you stand between citizens, government, and youth, right? So there are certain things that are structural problems which you just are not equipped to address or are not in your mandate, but you need to know this context in your drive to get more youth to register to vote. I think part of this problem is a problem of transitioning, consolidating post-colonial and post-apartheid societies, because the fact is that growing an economy, creating social cohesion, creating equal opportunity, addressing issues of injustice are issues that will naturally collide with regular election cycles. Okay, so you are going against the tide in some respects. You are not here to deal with unemployment, but you are having to find ways to help youth register to vote, youth who actually have become desensitized to electoral processes because of issues such as unemployment, right? This is what youth want government to deal with, and you might have to bridge that gap even though yours is not to deal with unemployment, right? Of course, this means that youth are more likely to live with elders who are working compared to them, which is why some of us are more likely to vote. As I said, please don't be offended that you are in the over 35 category. There are some positives to that. But it means that you will probably have young people in your households who think, why am I voting if I'm unemployed? And you don't see that. They don't see electoral processes as a way to change the status quo, whereas some of us have lived through electoral processes that have changed the status quo, okay? Youth are also more likely than older cohorts to see state institutions and leaders as corrupt. Full stop. We don't have to get into that. But this is a warning, and we've seen it elsewhere on the continent, that youth are more likely to trust the military to govern than democratic governments. We all hope that day doesn't come, right, in South Africa, especially because we've avoided many of the pitfalls of violent conflict to transition into a democracy, but it is a fact in other African countries. So looking at that, what are the drivers of youth voter apathy? Firstly, political disenchantment, which we've discussed, distrust in systems and institutions, and lack of civic education, which you've already brought up in your introductions and your keynote addresses. Youth in transitional and consolidating democracies do not see voting as a means of emancipation and liberation in the way that previous generations did. We must face that fact. And therefore, the strategies that we use to get youth to register to vote, but importantly, to show up and vote, have to be different than before. Nothing can be assumed. For them, political institutions and democratic processes have not delivered much. There is little incentive for them to engage in these electoral processes. If you want examples of this, you can check any news channel a few days before elections when they interview young people, and just see how young people are indifferent about whether they'll show up to vote and what voting means to them. And we saw this with the 2024 election, where even a lot of us were ready and willing to vote for different reasons, but young people just were neither here nor there. Just to give you an illustration of the depth of this problem across the continent, if you go to Afrobarometer and literally search youth voter apathy, these are the articles that lead to research that will come up in many places of the continent, mainly focused on youth unemployment, governments not delivering what youth expect, okay? And you can delve deeper into that research, both in South Africa and on the continent. But just to give that framing that this is an issue that might be or is beyond your control, and that you are trying to mediate as the IEC. Are hybrid platforms effective? Yes, obviously, because they're being used for youth to participate politically with issues that concern them, right? So where there might be singular issues that youth are concerned about and that they can use social media to mobilize for, in order to get their point across, then yes, social media and online platforms are useful for their activism, right? Unfortunately, the same social media and online platforms are not being used by youth as a way to engage with electoral processes. We also have to be aware that hybrid platforms have a lot of different types of information that youth cannot always distinguish between because of their immersion in these platforms, right? there's a lot of misinformation, disinformation, and factual information out there. A lot of people on social media will clearly say that what I'm telling you is my opinion. It might not be a fact. But the problem with social media and online platforms, unlike when we interact together, is that it is highly possible for you to be in an echo chamber or a silo when you are on social media due to algorithms, right? So if all I'm looking for is fashion and cat videos on online platforms and social media, eventually that's all that my algorithm is going to show, right? It's the same with youth. So if they're completely disengaged from electoral processes, you can have a strong social media presence, but with them only looking at certain types of information, you still might not be able to get through to them, right? Never abandon grassroots strategies. Youth are also more vulnerable online when they are on online or social media platforms. And I've just put a headline there, which I'm sure all of us are familiar with. And so we shouldn't assume that youth either feel safe online or are protected online. And also with generative AI, this problem is compounded 1,000%. I don't know if any of you saw the AI generation of Nelson Mandela going into, I think it was ShopRite or Checkers, and eating Lay's a few weeks ago. And I literally commented on the post saying, "What in the Rainbow Nation is this? Please, can we leave our first democratically elected president to rest?" But there might be youth amongst us who see that and would think that this is real, right? This is why history, sociology, political studies still matter at all levels of education. Okay? And then finally, again, the warning from different institutions that do research, such as Afrobarometer, simply reaching out through technology is insufficient. We are going to need political actors to also play their part in youth voter registration, dealing with youth voter apathy, but also addressing youth needs through political participation. Okay, so what is the role of the IEC in increasing youth voter registration on or through hybrid platforms? Firstly, we have to remember that online presence, social media are not a panacea for increasing youth voter turnout or registration. We can use these platforms, but they can't be the only or increasing types of platforms that we use at any one time. Media literacy is important. In the past few elections that we've had, media literacy has been focused on higher age groups, 25 up, but not enough focusing on 18 to 24 and discussing media literacy at a level that is understandable for that very strict youth voter category. Media literacy has also been spearheaded by the same research organizations who've identified these issues. So maybe there's scope for partnership there with those who are already dealing with youth voter apathy and the IEC. Youth don't see democratic processes or electoral processes as a means of changing their status quo, and we have to ask this hard question of whether youth include the IEC in this equation, right? I can say that I respect the IEC. I've grown up seeing the work that the IEC has done and what it has done to consolidate and stabilize democracy in this country. Someone much younger than me doesn't have that experience. And when they say they don't trust government or they don't trust state institutions, they might include the IEC in that equation. Have you considered that? Painful as it might be. Okay. Then, sorry, I need to see the slides on the screen. Thank you. Voter registration and participation can be positioned as a rite of passage, and there's a lot of research that discusses this to say, usually, no matter the country, the income level, we all know that youth in different cultures, different countries have different rites of passage, and voting can be considered a rite of passage. I remember growing up when my sister got her green ID book, and that was considered a rite of passage then, right? How are you dealing with youth registration and voter turnout as a cultural rite of passage within our country, right? That might be important for you to consider as a way to innovate around voter registration. Just on this point, I'll give you an anecdotal example. I've been lecturing for 7 years now. In the first 3 years, I used to ask my students, have you registered to vote? Are you going to vote in the next local government elections, the next national and provincial elections, regardless of your political affiliations? And they would say, yeah, but you know, when we go to Home Affairs to pick up our ID book, the system is offline or whatever else is happening. In the past 3 years, excluding the year of the pandemic where there was a strong national lockdown, my students say that they don't get their green ID books or go to Home Affairs. They apply at the bank and pick up their ID cards from there. And now I am looking like the fossil lecturer who is asking, are you registered to vote? Did you go to Home Affairs? And I promise you, I'm really not that far from the 35 cohort. But they just look at me like, who still goes to Home Affairs? We go to the bank to pick up our ID cards. Are we innovating around things like that? Leaving pamphlets at the bank when students go pick up their, ID cards. It might be something worth considering, okay? And then finally, we can balance youth engagement on online platforms or social media with concerns about the digital divide, right? I know that the majority of youth are based in Gauteng from the research that I did, but I wasn't able to verify. Provinces such as Gauteng, KZN, and Western Cape. But are there still initiatives that address the digital divide that we have? Let's not assume that all youth have a smartphone or data, right? We saw that during the pandemic, where as universities, we had to literally send out laptops and make data available to students who were not based in provinces that are well connected. So don't forget the digital divide. Don't just think about this algorithm that assumes that youth are online and that's where you are going to reach them. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Dr. Chilenga-Butao, for that insightful research. I think there are a number of lessons that we picked up and that would best shape our approach into voter education as we proceed to reach this young cohort of the citizens of the country. It was amazing to hear that we have an active but yet non-voting youth in our society. Irrespective of the efforts that are being made and implemented as the Electoral Commission, we still have young people who are not voting, but yet they are democratically active in other layers and facets of society. And we appreciate the work that you do and the insight that you have brought this morning. We are now going to open for questions, and I will get guidance and assistance, especially for those that have questions, the audience that we have online. Somebody will just assist in that regard, but I'm going to open for questions from the floor. If I can see by show of hands, if there are reactions, comments from the presentation that we just had. I'm noting 2 hands. Okay, I'll take the 3 hands, and if there are further questions and if time permits, we'll then proceed with questions. Yes, let's start with the gentleman on my left.
Yeah, good morning. My name is Sandy Lemlangeni, one of the civic champions under Activate Change Drivers. Dr. Thokozani, thank you so much for your insights. Yeah, they are very educational. But I have 2 points. The first one in being about the issues of social media involvement. So I'm one of the social media admins in my community called Itzakani Online. We have over 100,000 members. So as far as I've seen, voter education can be used in terms of how you communicate with your community, because as far as we've been doing voter education in my community, for us it was fortunate that we have seen positive results, even turnout from the community and how we engage with them as well. So I think maybe we just need to be moderate in how we monitor information on social media. You see. And then the question that I have to you, in which I've noted, is that in your view, how can academic research on youth voter behavior translate into real or practical ways in which youth organizations who are working in communities can engage with institutions such as yours? Yeah.
Thank you. My name is Mqobi. I'm from Kagiso Trust. And I think there was an observation that you made, and comment and question rather. So you said that the education and income bracket are some level of determinants for voter registration and participation. And especially coming from the NPO sector, it seems as if people who have access to democracy are the ones who participate in it. And the people on the outskirts who would be living under your traditional and then other leadership, who have the many hurdles essentially to get through between themselves and the South African Constitution, are the ones who would leave it behind. And so in looking at, with this in mind, do you think that it would be an overstep for the IEC to bring democracy to those places on a more consistent basis, in the same way that we in Johannesburg or in Cape Town or all the major cities have that amount of access and almost can determine our lives in greater form than someone in the rural areas? Do you think that that's an overstep from the IEC? Would that be going into the realm of political parties? And 2, how? Yeah.
Good morning. My name is Swarelo Mahlabane from Leleke Station 3. I'm serving a youth sector in my community. Actually, my point, I want to just speak about the resources that IEC put to educate youth in our community are limited. Why I'm saying this? If ever I can check even this seminar, that we have, youth is not even 80%. It's not even 50%. It tells also the result that we are speaking about, 6% that we get. If ever I can check the youth that came here, they use their own money while they are not working. We speak about unemployment in our country, then that one also affects us as a youth. And also the issue of you just speak about home affairs. I feel touched. We don't even see IEC pamphlets. That one in our home affairs. I think also that one can add also to give our youth that after getting ideas, they must also go and vote. Thank you.
Shall I respond? Okay. Am I audible? Okay. So to respond to the first comment about reaching 100,000 people on your platform, I think that's great, especially as, you know, a youth grassroots movement. There are 21 million youth in South Africa. So 100,000 is great, but compared to 21 million, it's not that we don't acknowledge your efforts. It is that those efforts need to be significantly ramped up, which then will lead to the answer to the second question around how, you know, do we use statistics, or sorry, my answer is we need to use statistics on how and where to reach those youth, right? So of course the IEC has statistics on where youth are registering to vote and turning out, and wherever they're not turning out compared to where they register, that will obviously give the answer about where efforts need to be stronger. So if you know that, for instance, in my ward, which is Ward 99 in Johannesburg, youth registered to vote, maybe 60% of them, but only 0.5% of them showed up to actually vote, then there needs to be some engagement with the youth in that ward, times however many wards we have in South Africa, right? You might even find that what I've said about education, about income level, might not apply in a ward such as mine, but might apply in a ward such as yours. The point is that there needs to be a targeted strategy, right? In terms of the question of overreach of the IEC, and how they make sure that their presence is seen and felt in rural areas. In my mind, and I stand to be corrected, I don't think that it's overreach for the IEC to increase their drive in areas where they know that access to electoral processes or democratic processes is more difficult than in other areas. I think that's actually part of the mandate of the IEC, but I stand to be corrected. I think part of the confusion there is that maybe where there are strongholds of different political parties in those areas, then political parties might not be open to the IEC just doing their work, which is voter registration and voter participation. And we need to draw a line between the two, because sometimes we think that if political parties are going door to door and campaigning door to door, then somehow those people are also registering to vote and then showing up to vote, and that might not be the case at all. So I don't think that it's overreach. What maybe needs to happen is there needs to be more partnership between the IEC and possibly non-partisan organizations to make sure that then democracy becomes accessible, but also is neutral and not associated with being part of a political party. But again, we have the expertise in this room and those who know the mandate of the IEC. In my mind, though, it's not overreach. It's exactly what the IEC should be doing. And then on the third comment, there's nothing to disagree with there. And I think what you've outlined around how youth are able to participate or not in forums such as this is also echoed in actually older age groups, where, for instance, people will say, well, in local government, certain processes of engagement rely on us being available during working hours. And quite frankly, we can't leave work to participate in, these processes, or we are called to a hall to rubber stamp certain processes. But the difference here is that the IEC is clearly aware, which is why we are in this room, and is looking for the strategies to overcome that, right? We can only give more suggestions and add to the data to show that your reach still needs to be wider and deeper in order for them to continue to do the work. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Doc. I'm just informed that you have a mic on you, so I hope that does not,
Okay.
you know,
Yes.
explicitly inform the fact that I'm not a Gen Z, or my techno ignorance. But I do look young, I hope, still. Thank you very much for the response. I'm not sure if our managers wanted to add on the last comment, especially particularly around resource and the fact that we're not present in terms of reaching the youth. I will have the mic go to you. Thank you.
Thank you so much. And I'm really appreciating the questions because they also initiate responses for clarity. And I'm thanking you, Dr. Chilenga-Butao, for also some of the clarification you've offered. And we are very receptive when people do tell us maybe they're not seeing enough. And it's sometimes important to put that into context. And I think that's the question you're asking, but also to alert our citizens and our country on what is coming up so that they're also able to look out for those kind of things. So even though today we're dealing with how democracy and technology meet to really expand the work that we do not just do civic education on technological platforms. In fact, our mandate is that we must reach all citizens wherever they are. And it is important for us to embrace all types of different platforms. And face-to-face remains a very important way in which we conduct civic education. And that's why I spoke to our schools democracy program, tertiary, but even those in communities, because we do have young people who are not in employment, not in education and training. And we do target them as well because they won't be in organized spaces. And some of my colleagues who are here do know that they do conduct civic education at home affairs queues, at taxi rank, at a mall, wherever people are. But of course, there are only so many people physically that you may be able to see. And that's why using media, using technology, using WhatsApp, which is a mass communication platform, using stakeholder engagement to multiply our effort that may be limited by human capacity, but also financial resources that we share with various priorities in the country. For the upcoming elections, and as we do for all elections, there is always civic education going on in the country, whether there's an election or not. But we do increase our capacity in the months leading up to elections so that we reach as many South Africans as possible. And you will begin to see our expansion stuff in the new year, as we'll be increasing them through our municipal outreach coordinators to ensure that in wards you will have people who are there conducting civic and education sessions, whether in community halls or in any spaces that you're able to see them. And you're also able to reach out to our local and provincial officers to ask them to come to your own engagement meetings. And we're here to be active citizens. So if you know you have other young people in your space that you would like IEC to come and engage, that is what we're there for. And we welcome those type of requests. But we definitely do face-to-face. We do media platforms as well as utilize technology to try and find you wherever you are, wherever you consume your news and information. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Memwahisi. I'm seeing two hands still. Maybe in the interest of time, let me just see those hands so that we move speedily. Okay, I'm seeing 5. Is it 5 hands? Okay, so we will start on my right. I'm noting the 4 hands on my right, and there's one last hand in the middle. Okay, I'll take the last one also on the left. Maybe let's start on the far left, and then we'll move across the room. And I believe those will be the last set of questions in the interest of time so that we can move to the next speaker.
Morning, everyone. My name is Mqobi. I'm from Katlehong, Mngati section. I'm serving as a youth crime prevention desk chairperson, and I'm also a student representative council for Gauteng CET College as an academic board member. When it comes to the issues of youth apathy in voter participation, it has so many dynamics within it, because there were things that were said by the general manager and both our speaker, what they presented on. Can I start from what our general manager said on the partnerships that they are growing within the PSET sector, also on how they are partnering up with universities, colleges, but I think it could go further, and saying that we have an IEC youth structure with the Department of Higher Education and Training that's going to be there on civic education, that's going to continuously, so not just being done because the elections are now coming up, but be done regularly, so as if we're making it a norm on civic education. Because right now what we're doing, it's as if like we are going to concentrate on it when elections are now coming up, and then because that's how they feel, like the youth feel. That's how I would look at it. Because even when you're gonna go into communities, the communities are gonna say, "Oh, now they're starting doing something because elections are coming up." Oh, now they're starting to stand up because elections are coming up. I think maybe if ever like regularly, so have that structure, have that smaller organization that partnered with it head, and be able to continue with civic education along until maybe let me put it in an SRC manner, like putting SRC in that space to say, can you teach your peers on how they can start up voting, as in now when they are start applying for what's this NSFAS, please also include civic education, because they have rights when they are busy applying for this. This can be done. This can be done. You have a right to do this. You have a right to do that. Remember, the policies that are being put here. You have a right to participate on policy change, and so on and so on. Because now it feels as if like the government is taking decisions for us as youth, and we are not there, or might as well they are the ones who are not actually including us when they are starting to have discussions on policy changing, on policy, even budget voting. We don't have enough voice when it comes to those sorts of certain issues that are there. And whenever there's amendment, we will hear that there is a policy that has been put in place, and we didn't get a chance to try to have a voice within that policy and have our own opinions, going down to code of conducts, and so on and so on. From community level also, the the participating of the participation of youth from there, from that level, it's really it's frightening when I'm gonna say that, because not all of the when we start talking about democracy, voting, they get bored. They really get bored. But how do we get the youth to be more interested on how they can vote, how they can participate, how they can challenge the government in certain areas? Because um there's something the speaker said about the youth that's on social media likely not being not taking that much participation on voting. Excuse me. That's because some of them are going to take ideologies that they're going to be taking from the social media. The countries that were shown there, they're going to take those ideologies and not thinking enough that, no, you know what, we haven't participated enough on our democracy so that we can be able to take our step, and maybe we can take that direction before, but we haven't taken any direction before we can even take a direction of trying to shut down the government, or making protests. They don't even understand that there are some patterns, like protocols that you have to understand and know about in challenging the government. And like that protocol and process and due processes of challenging the government. They haven't gone that far to understand those ideologies, that we can still save our own country, us as the youth. The political parties that you are busy crying about, the politicians that you are busy crying about, we are the ones who have to be going on those parties and start trying to challenge them in their ideology of taking the country to a direction where they are taking, and coming up with our own innovative ways that the country can actually take this sort of direction when it comes to us, the youth, taking participation economically, so even economically so. We are crying about unemployment, but we still have the power of entrepreneurship within our spaces, but we haven't taken that much step into those. There are so many aspects when we look into the youth participating in voter and democratic participation. Can I leave it right there for time's sake? Thank you so much.
Can I request that the next commenters be as brief as possible so that we may allow everybody who had their hands up?
Good morning. All protocol observed. And I don't have a question per se, but it's a comment from what the doctor here said and what the manager has said. For me, to vote is a no-brainer because of my age and because of where I come from. But what I have observed as a parent to two Gen Zs, the first one is 27 and has never registered to vote. And I've had conversations with him about why, and his reasoning, it doesn't make sense to me, because he's saying it doesn't help. Corruption is everywhere. We are struggling to find jobs. He works as a chef, and he will tell you that in my industry, the establishment would rather hire foreigners instead of hiring us. The payment is this and this. So what is it that politicians are going to do to assist me? And then I tell him that, but voting is the only power you have to change what is happening. If you see that this political party is not doing what you think is taking the country where it should be going, you have got this ballot that can turn the tide and change. And then you'll say, me alone, what? I'm saying many young people are feeling the way that you are. And then as young people, if you can look at what is happening in our country with the sense that we want to change it, then we will see the change. But if you are apathetic the way you are, will remain in this situation until you are a 50-year-old and nothing would have happened. So you are not an active citizen. Then I've got a 17-year-old. I work for the Gauteng Provincial Legislature. So there are a lot of partnerships with the IEC whenever we have events. So recently, I think in August, we had a women's sector parliament. So the IEC was there at the session. So I had taken my 17-year-old with me. So I was busy working inside the hall. Then when we were leaving, she came out to say, oh, I've registered to vote. I've never had a conversation with her about voting, the importance. She's politically aware and all. And I was like, who said you should register? No, I saw the IEC person there. I asked questions and I'm registered. So I'm turning 18 in December, so which means next year I'm voting. So these are two different age groups. We live in the same family, but the other one, and I guess what you are saying with basic education, what you are doing in school, I think it influences what our children are exposed to. So I think the partnerships that we have as well, seeing IEC people at all the events that we have, I think it also plays a role in bringing in people, because as the GPL will have many people, community people coming to participate in our events, and then always the IEC is there, and then people go there, ask questions, and they also register. So thank you so much for that.
Thank you very much for the comment and affirming the programs that we are doing within society. At least somebody is seeing them. Thank you.
Hello, everyone. I am a representative from Minds, Minds Africa. My name is Nathan Kambale. So I have a quick question for the delegates of the IEC and Dr. Chilenga-Butao. As a youth myself, I think that from what I've gathered from the discussion so far is that the youth have a very individualistic mindset and that they only care about themselves as individuals. And I don't think we can begin to have this conversation of apathy to agency without addressing this mindset. So, where I get this idea from that the youth have an individualistic mindset, is I look around, especially at universities, and I find that most of the people studying at uni are studying and working hard so that they can leave South Africa and build a better life for themselves overseas. Why is that? Maybe the youth don't have something greater than themselves, that they can collectively gather and support. So how do we begin to build something like a government, or start to shift to a collective mindset, so that the youth have something that they can work towards, that they can vote towards, like our predecessors did before? Because democracy for South Africa was a shift from the apartheid regime, and that brought South Africans together. The youth don't have something like that anymore. So how does the IEC, and how do we as individuals, and how can the government create a new idea, a new goal, or something that can shift the mindset of the youth to a more collective mindset rather than an individual mindset? Thank you.
Thank you so much for the opportunity. My name is Lihlogolo Madila. I can say I'm not from any youth organization and I'm not proud, but I was fortunate to be invited to this event. And I can say thank you for the beautiful presentations as well. I've just noted a few points and I want to try to come up with solutions. I'm not sure if it can be solutions, but maybe they can contribute to something better. I can say that most youth, they've lost trust in political parties, not necessarily in democracy itself. I normally believe that what works for me, it can work for another person, even if it's not everyone. For example, when I received this message to come here, it was something like a thought leadership seminar, not disclosing that it's IEC. And when I RSVP'd, that's when the whole scope came to say that it's IEC. And I was like, not IEC again. You see? So I'm trying to show you where this thing is coming from. So now it is us working on the perception that my vote doesn't matter. Because I can tell you a lot of us has benefited from the apartheid, not apartheid, the democracy. But people need to be made aware. And if you were to do those programs where you have got ambassadors, I think the focus should be how is the message delivered and who is delivering the message. Because I can tell you, the noises of the political parties gets to the youth quicker than the message that the IEC or the rest of us are trying to deliver, you see. So I can say misinformation reaches people faster than the truth. So it is something that we should be working on around. And again, I can say that while listening to the presentations, like you've done a lot of work trying to initiate programs, schools, tertiaries, but still the youth are not participating in the elections. I can propose that how about we evaluate the methods that are currently in place? Remember, when it comes to improving a process or something, it's not something that happens overnight. It's something that you work on it. So if we take the statistics and the data, okay, after we've done campaigning, so and so voted. So how can we improve from here? So it's something that should be ongoing, because I can see elections are being labeled as an event. So hence I'm saying, yeah, is what I want to propose. Thank you so much.
Much. In the interest of time, can I request that you note your input? I'm just afraid that we have already tapped into the next speaker's time, and we might get into trouble there. So we will get reactions and responses if time permits after the next speaker has done his presentation. My apologies regarding that, and apology for really taking time outside what I'm allocated. I don't want the host to not invite me again because I'm not doing well in time. So I must respect them for the program that was put together. Thank you very much for your reactions and the comments that we've received from the floor. They were really insightful, and the affirmation that indeed there's a lot that is taking place, even though it's at a limited space. Without further ado, I'm going to briefly introduce our next speaker, and in 3 words, which I believe will encapsulate the character that he is and the work that he is doing. Help me to introduce and welcome Mr. Mudibe J. Mudiba, who is an Africanist. He is also a writer. He is also a speaker, an investigative journalist, a director and co-founder of the Insight Factor. He's very outspoken for those who follow social media. And I believe that his experience and insight and exposure into the media space will help us this morning to understand youth voter apathy, combating misinformation, and promoting electoral integrity. Strategies to counter misinformation and enhance digital literacy. Ladies and gentlemen, may we welcome Mr. Mudibe J. Mudiba to address us. Over to you, sir.
Okay. Firstly, thank you very much to the IEC for inviting me. I was very shocked that I got the invite from IEC because I'm always ones criticizing IEC on social media. So I think I'm being neutralized now. So I know. But I'll be very brief and I'll be very short because, you know, as a media person, I always like being short and brief and giving people the news and out and let the story continue on its own without me leading it for them. And I think most of the points that I'm going to say have already been said by my fellow doctor panelists, and have been said by the speakers and you guys here. But I want you to think of a moment. I want you to think for a moment about the last election. Think about your friends, your siblings, your classmates. How many of them did not vote? How many said, what's the point? My vote doesn't matter. The feeling is a South African anomaly, but in our context of transition, it's a democratic emergency. Today, we're not here to lecture young people for being apathetic. We're here to diagnose why that apathy exists, to understand the new position of misinformation that feeds it, and most importantly, to equip ourselves with strategies to rebuild the democracy that young people want to be a part of. Now, young people often feel underrepresented in politics, often thinking that politicians are all the same. I, as a young person who works in the media space, feel the same way. And I'll tell you why. As an investigative journalist, when I ask a certain minister, I won't name names, I'll say minister or municipal manager, in the past 3 years, how many tenders were out, how much were they, how much did you guys spend, how much of the projects were done, how many of those tenders went to black companies or white companies, I wouldn't get that information in time. I must now get a little source of mine in the corner and then talk to them on the side, then I get the information. But when I draft questions properly to the municipality or to any organization requesting that information, it takes time. But the same politicians, when they want something, they're the first ones to come to you. And you see it after the ANC, NEC meetings, they're the first ones to call you, Mchanus, really, there's this thing. But when you go back to the minister, please give me information about this, the information doesn't come. It takes months and months and days. And often that leads us to think that all politicians are the same then. They only want you when you are relevant to them. Now look at the elections. The elections are coming now. My brother who works at the Tsakani radio station, they're going to come to you now, say, no, interview us. Then when after elections, when you go to them for an interview, you must now book them. You must now talk to you must now talk to their PA, you must now talk to their spokesperson, but they're the ones who called you before elections. Say, Mr. Budimari, it's elections, man, please, man, you must start talking good things about us. Once they get elected, you're going to run for them. They're going to run for them. And that now feeds into this narrative of us as young people. So that means all politicians are the same. And that might not necessarily be the problem of the IEC, but now becomes a problem that the IEC must now have to face and bear with. As we try and understand this phenomenon, we need to ask ourselves, why is this the case? Could the corruption we often read about at the hands of our politicians be a driving factor? We need to ask ourselves, have we as a society failed to make elections and the political system popular amongst the youth? Now, the youth unemployment is a timing ticking bomb. And that's why when you ask people, why aren't you going to vote? It's not going to change. I'm not going to get any bread today. I'm going to go home to no electricity. And that's not the problem of the IEC. And that's why I often say that we must be honest. IEC can't take government area. And my brother mentioned something about the mindset. As black people, we had black consciousness. We had the mindset. And as a young person, I'm 32 years old, so I still qualify under youth. And I didn't have to live under apartheid to know that I have to go and vote. Maybe because I had an uncle who was very black consciousness who taught us Pan-Africanism, to say that when a black person sees another black person, he sees a sister. And we grew up like that. So you even know that when you go and vote, I'm going to vote because I don't want to live under that regime again. I don't want the same mistakes to happen. I went to a white school and we were taught that you cannot speak your African languages. Yeah, it's barbaric. And then you ask yourself, but this is Africa. You are not supposed to speak Zulu in Africa, but there's someone who's speaking another foreign language in your country. Now, that is the problem of the government that should have instilled that mindset at the early age. So that when you go and vote, you're voting to change that school in Benoni, to say that it must no longer happen that a black child gets told not to speak the African language at that school. It should be something that says, I'm going to go and vote because I want that change at that school. Now, that is the mindset that we had black consciousness. But somewhere along the line, we lost that consciousness and started thinking for ourselves. But if we look at the Feast Must Fall generation, a movement of which many of us come from, a movement which shook the political landscape in a country where young people across the country, irrespective of political affiliation, came together to fight for one common goal. Now, a movement by the youth, for the youth, how many of those youth activists that led us across the country, how many of them are now leading political parties? Or how many are there? How many are they playing prominent roles in political organizations or in prominent positions in society? Now the issue of representation now comes into play. The youth don't feel represented when they look at our parliament. Instead, they see it as being another retirement village. And my doctor here mentioned that young people are more likely to lead and want to be led by military. I'm one of those. I'd rather be led by an Ibrahim Traore than be led by a 75-year-old Ramaphosa, for example. And I think that such engagements needs us to be robust and be honest with each other. That young people are now turning towards the left. And now would rather, for example, love a Vladimir Putin, for example, than a Donald Trump. Because I think we see what's happening in society. We live through those expectations. We live through the material conditions of our time. And therefore, we need to ask ourselves a question, is democracy really democratic? And if it was democratic, then why aren't we taking part in that democratic process? Now, misinformation, according to the Cambridge Dictionary, is defined as false information given by either mistake or deliberately. We know that young people live online. They live on TikTok, they live on Instagram, they live on WhatsApp, and some of us live on Twitter, which is now called X. Now, misinformation is often designed to trigger strong emotions, anger, fear, or outrage. Now, this makes it shareable than a dry factual news story, and I'll tell you why. During elections, when we received stories that IEC scanners are not working, we pushed that messaging very quickly. Hey, those things trended. And what does that mean? It means that I get numbers to my platform. And I must be honest with that. But when it's time for a good story to be shared about IEC, we want juicy stuff. And we must be honest, because young people want juicy stuff. So you have to make IEC juicy. Now, combating misinformation is going to require a lot of things. And it's not going to require mainstream media alone, because mainstream media itself is no longer trusted by the public. Mainstream media itself has been at the forefront of sharing fake news, whether deliberately or not deliberately, but it's going to require a combination of factors. It's going to require a combination of using social media influencers who have been trained before. It's going to require community radio stations, community papers. It's going to require mainstream media itself. But you can't allow a story example to say that if a story is not released by News 24, it does not make it factual. And therefore, if in order for you to how can I say it, to prove that this story is real, you must now go to News 24. And I'll tell you why. If you look at the story in Ekurhuleni about the recent auditor that got killed, the Inside, I think us as the platform Inside Factor at the forefront of investigating that. We released it 3 months ahead, News 24, to say this auditor was killed because he was investigating a forensic report with regard to chemical toilets. I've never received so many insults in my life, where the municipality itself wants to take you to court for saying that. Now, the municipality is not taking News 24 to court for releasing the same thing we released 3 months ago. Why? And we must be honest, because it's a white media platform. Now, it now comes that misinformation must not be something that is only pushed by white people, by black people on TikTok. That the white media platform itself can also be at the forefront of pushing misinformation. And that if something is not now, in order for black people to realize that it's true, it must be said by a white person. And now there is something that we as well have to have that uncomfortable conversation with ourselves to say, how do we combat misinformation? Are we now saying that before we trust this thing that is true, News 24 and ENCA must now say, no, it is true. Now, we do remember that, for example, Western media were at the forefront of saying, for example, Zuma's got a house in Dubai. We only realized the thing was fake. Only now we realize that news was fake. Those articles were fake. And that's why we see bit by bit at the commission that no, there are journalists who are part of this syndicate, working with gangsters, working with drug cartels to push certain messages. So it's something that is going to require mainstream media, yes, independent media platforms, community radio stations, social media influencers who are political. Because there are social media influencers for sports, for example, for fashion, for example. But as the country builds social media influencers who are political, who are going to direct the country and influence the country in this particular way. Now, the IEC needs to be robust and be first on the ball at all times. We saw how the IEC failed to properly communicate during the past elections. We saw how the screens went black for a while, raising major concerns amongst many corners in our country. Now, I've heard IEC trying to speak about what happened with the screens, but were you as aggressive and enough in pushing South Africans to be confident enough in you to say, no, maybe there was a technical glitch? Because if you're not going to be robust enough and be first on the ball, then you allow fake news and you allow misinformation to creep in. And fake news travels 6 times better than a good story. To say that IEC scanners are not working is going to travel 6 times more than saying that all stations are open on time, they closed on time. So you have to push your messaging and be as robust as how misinformation pushes. Now, Chair, allow me to be a bit controversial here. In order to feel comfortable and confident enough in our institutions, we need our institutions run by people as a society to feel confident in. For example, Chair, Parliament is now endorsing Mr. Mosotho Moepa and Judge Pillay to serve in the IC. This is despite the recommendations of a panel chaired by the Chief Justice Mandi Samaya, of which raised concerns about the competence, temperament, and suitability of these two candidates. Now, are you as the IEC going to say that no, we're appointing these people? Parliament is endorsing these people to fill up the certain positions at the IEC, which is not the problem of the IEC, it's Parliament. Parliament is now saying that we're giving these people, we're endorsing these people for them to take up positions. Now, what does that say to me as a young person? Am I audible? Okay. Now, that is not the problem of the IEC. It's the problem of no. Now, for example, that's not the problem of the IEC. It's the problem of Parliament. Parliament is endorse these people and give them to you. This is despite Chief Mandi Samaya, Chief Justice, saying these people might not be suitable enough. Now, to me, what's that going to say as a young person? I see. We're not going to say, no, it's Parliament, it's our government who's giving us this. We're going to say it's IEC. That IEC is led by people that are not suitable. So, as I conclude, Chair, I think we also need to be deliberate enough as a society to say that where are young people? If we're not voting, where are we? Are we at Konka? Are we at Chisanyama? Where are we? And if you say why young people are not at voting stations, now we must ask ourselves, where are they? And then we must go to where they are. If it means we must open up a voting station at Taboo, we must do that. Because that's where the people are. I guess that's where we are. We must make it fashionable for us. If we are saying, no, we want young people at Chisanyama, then let's have a voting station at Chisanyama. And go to where the people are. So, Chair, that's my input. I hope I was not controversial enough. I hope to be invited again. Thank you.
Thank you very much. We appreciate the frank discussion and the robust comments that came out of your presentation. Where are young people? That's the question that we are all asking ourselves, and I believe that's the question that drives our efforts to intervene and find young persons wherever they are so that they're included in the processes that drives democracy, especially in election space. But thank you I did warn you that he's outspoken, so at least I made that comment. You were ready enough for all the missiles that came out of the discussion. But we always appreciate frankness, because at least we can gain, an eye into the blind spot area that we're not seeing. If these are the discussions that young people are having where we are not present, then it seems it gives us an indication that going into that space, we need to go and be relevant to where young people are. Thank you very much, Mr. Mudiba, for your insights and the frankness around the discussion regarding misinformation. In the interest of time, I see I am almost 1 minute into the tea time, which is the next activity that we're supposed to go into. I'm going to at least indulge 2 or 1 hand of response or reactions into what was presented. And if there are also comments from our managers also to have a say into the presentation that came forth, or if there are reactions regarding the comments that was mentioned around recommendation of commissioners so that we are able to provide proper and better information in that regard. Okay, I'm noting the PO who would be the first, and then I'll take only the 3 hands that I'm seeing in the middle. Thank you very much.
Good morning, and thank you very much, Program Director, for allowing me an opportunity to contribute in this discussion. I must also express my appreciation for the 2 hard-hitting panelists. I think your submissions today are thought-provoking. I want to limit myself to the process of the appointments of commissioners. The Independent Electoral Commission plays no role. Any South African who meets the requirement, regardless of race, age, can stand up to hold that public office. This process is a transparent process. All candidates that are shortlisted are interviewed in public. And those interviews are actually conducted by some of the Chapter 9 institutions, but led by the Office of the Chief Justice. What is required from that panel, after having ran the transparent process, after having even verified the integrity of the submissions made by those individuals, they then put together they are expected to put together a short list of names of not more than 8. Those names are then presented to the portfolio committee responsible for Home Affairs. That portfolio committee will have to deliberate until there is a meeting of minds. They then make the final submission of names. As we know that there are 3 names that have been now presented to Parliament for consideration. Once that process is concluded and Parliament has deliberated on those names, the person, by the way, who appoints commissioners for an institution such as the Independent Electoral Commission is the state president. So he has the authority to appoint commissioners. He might actually not accept the names. Interestingly, out of 8 names shortlisted and presented to the Portfolio Committee on Home Affairs, as I've mentioned, strangely, the Portfolio Committee submitted 3 names for consideration. Interestingly is that as of the 4th of November, there will be 3 vacant positions of commissioners in the IEC. So in this instance, if I'm the state president, it means I have no leeway because I'm given 3 names. There are 3 vacancies. So it limits the scope of the president to apply his mind on this matter. I'm not sure whether the president will, I think he has the power of returning and say, please deliberate on these names if that is his feeling. So I thought I need to clarify this process that every South African citizen can stand for public office. And the recruitment or the appointment of commissioners is an open and transparent process. And I've indicated that even the interviews are done in public. You stand there and you are asked questions. And that is how the process has unfolded. And I must be honest, Mr. Modiba, that I don't recall the Chief Justice making the statements or the remarks that you are alluding to, because I have a vested interest in this process and have been following it closely. I must indicate that those candidates were interrogated thoroughly. But I don't remember the Chief Justice, because she's not only the authority on this, it's a panel that was running this process. But I thought, let me correct that. Apart from that, I think you've made some very mind-intriguing, proposals, and it's something that I think we need to take inside as the Electoral Commission, as we plan and thresh out our strategies to consider, so that we include the insights that you've given us as our action plan. So I'll restrict myself to those comments. As the host, I hardly comment here. I'm here to listen, so that the guests and the participants are afforded the full platform to interrogate, engage meaningfully, and contribute in this very interesting discussion. But I'm compelled to correct some of the narratives. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, PO.
Thank you once more. So 2 comments. It's 1 comment and a question. To begin, I do want to slightly push back against the narrative that a lack of voting indicates an ideological break. Young people are participating in democracy, and as long as South Africa is the protest capital of the world, that is a participation of sorts. And I want to indicate this necessarily because the anti-apartheid struggle wasn't for the vote, it was for land. And so when we then equate this lack of voting to almost a loss of Black consciousness, so much so that we take away from what the Black consciousness movement was about, I do think that we lose what the fight at a broad scale was about. And yes, the vote was under it because it was land and self-determination, and self-determination happens through a vote, but it can't be concentrated in a ballot. And I think that's what young people are communicating more than anything. But secondly, and this is going off the issue of the competence of the new IEC appointees, and perhaps to rephrase my first question, when I say, is there an overreach in the IEC participating in democracy, I mean that there's the traditional leadership in the country verges on dictatorship. Can the IEC have an opinion on that? Because this is part of why people are not voting. The electoral system that we are under, in the last election, people were confused by the ballot more than anything. Can the IEC have an opinion on that? And finally, the legal parameters of public participation. We are supposed to be participating continuously in this democracy through tender systems, through public consultations on new developments, so on and so forth. But the legal parameters for public participation are almost non-existent. If you talk to a friend and their other friend, you've done it. Can the IEC speak to that? Because as long as people are not engaged on a continuous basis, they will not show up to the ballot. So when I speak about, yes, the overreach, how far can the IEC go on having an opinion on such issues? And should we now consider that the IEC is almost the only body that can have an opinion and should have an opinion in order for people to vote?
Okay, thank you. We'll quickly take the last 2 questions and then we'll get responses.
Thank you, everyone. My name is Sipumeza Pata. I'm a former comrade of the 2015-2016 Fees Must Fall movement. I'm also, I've been part of various IEC outreach educational programs. And I'm also a chairperson of Ubuntu Development Foundation, a youth-led organization that works with underprivileged communities, in particular youth people. So I just came to answer the question on where is the youth. So the youth, mostly you'll find them at the universities, higher learning institutions. You find them in your communities as unemployed. That's where the majority is at. And then you still have your upcoming youth, which is in our learning, your lower learning institutions, high schools and primary schools. So how can we then, well, this is a recommendation to the IEC on how we can actually afford the young people a place or a role in the democracy, instead of just affording them the position of being a typical voter. So the first would be perhaps if in the higher learning institutions, there could be structures which are delegated by the IEC, even if it can be a voluntary structure, or which will host workshops on like your thought leadership programs on how to actually educate the students, and not only to educate, but also to encourage them to become educators themselves in their various communities to actually spread the word quicker. And in the community, we should work with community-based organizations. Maybe if the IEC could come and perhaps host certain maybe events with the community-based organizations, since they are the ones who are on the ground. Maybe just offer food and refreshments, which will attract them, and then train your community members to actually engage young people on becoming active citizens, and also focus on your lower learning institutions like your high schools, because you are actually now preparing them for the future, so that when they become like eligible to become voters, or they are now also part of the electoral system, they can have like what we call more effective voting mentality. Yes, no, that's it. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Yes. Is the last comment covered, or do you still have a question? You are sorted. Okay, thank you very much for those comments. And I'm not sure if there are responses from our panelists or also from our manager to what was the inputs that we got from the floor. Do you want to make a comment, Doc?
Okay, so I think we've discussed the drivers of youth apathy, and I think this will be a general comment for some of the feedback from our presentations. As my fellow panelist said, it's easy to blame the IEC for multiple issues. And I'll come back to two things in my presentation. Some issues are structural. It is not the place of the IEC to deal with a lot of the issues that are raised around the drivers of youth voter apathy. They are simply a mediator between state and society for electoral processes, right? We must know and understand the mandate of the IEC. And that might be the job of the IEC, to keep emphasizing that, and maybe to emphasize it aggressively. But unless you know the mandate of the IEC, then you will come and expect the IEC to do everything and achieve nothing. So that is quite important. I think also youth must remember that you have to be strategic in how you respond to the issues in society. Because if you come to, or if you go to the wrong institutions and then say that you've lost trust in them, you haven't achieved anything. You must know the mandate of the IEC. You must know the mandate of the Department of whatever issue you are going to address there. But to say that the IEC must deal with absolutely everything, I'm not sure, and I think we agree on this, that that is going to be possible. To address the comment about a common agenda or a common purpose, this is not a new problem in societies. You can move from a common strategy or a common purpose of fighting a common enemy, be it apartheid, discrimination, gender issues, etc., to issues being multiplied, right? It doesn't negate the fact that when you are provided with a process or a structure through which you can express that discontent, you refuse to engage politically through that process or that institution. What you're seeing as a young person where issues have become fragmented is also an issue that we face as older generations. in my community, amongst my circle, I can say to people, this is a concern for me, that is a concern for me. And other people will have different concerns. Doesn't take away the fact that local government elections are coming up. And if we don't vote for parties or independent candidates that will address those issues, then we will find it difficult for the next 4 or 5 years or whatever it is. There are times in life and society where there are common goals, and there are times where there are different issues that everyone is fighting for. But for as long as there are regular elections, and for as long as there is an electoral commission, it is still your responsibility to register to vote and then actually to show up to vote. We can discuss modalities, strategies, effectiveness, that's fine. If my issue is load shedding and my neighbor's issue is education, both of them are addressed when we go to vote, right? And we see this, if you notice in my presentation, even in first world countries, so-called first world countries, not everyone agrees on the issues, right? And youth voter apathy is still a problem, but people still show up to vote to say, I'm not happy with how either a dominant party or an opposition party or any other party is dealing with this. You still have the right to vote, which was emphasized by the lady sitting next to you, is that whether the issue is unemployment or anything else, if you don't use the ballot, then we're sitting in a very dangerous position, which, as both of us identified, is youth saying that we would rather be led by a military than through a democracy. And that is a dangerous place to be.
Thank you very much for that response, Doc.
Okay.
Do you
I just
want
wanted to add to
something?
what the doc is saying, is that someone votes for electricity, someone says, no, I want free education or something like that. I think we saw it during Fees Must Fall. Amongst us, there was those who were saying, no, but let's go and write exams. We were saying, no, we don't want to write exams here. We were saying we're shutting down all campuses. No one is going to class. But there were some amongst us who said, no, but let's go and attend class. But we were all fighting for free education. But in that free education, there was also different camps to say that, no, we are not going to go to class here. And we're saying that the entire country must come to a standstill. Nobody's going to class. No exam is going to be written. That we're creating a higher education crisis. So if we must fail, they're all going to fail. We'll repeat again next year. Until the government takes it seriously, that, you know what, let's just give them what they want. I think we saw it. I think we did the Fees Must Fall generation. We might have got we might have got 1 or 2 of our friends in parliament, but we didn't achieve free education. There is no free education as we speak. But could we have taken a revolution at that time, which was a revolution? But what kind of a revolution was it? It was a diplomatic revolution to say that we're going to protest, but we're still going to class. We're still going to write your exam. Then is that a revolution? It's not. If it's a revolution, then everything must come to a standstill. There must be no class, there must be no exam, and there must be a crisis that comes from it. And that crisis is now going to feed what we want, which is free education. So I'm just adding to what you were saying, to say that people we might say we're going to vote, but we vote for different things. And if people said, no, let's vote during Fees Must Fall, are we saying we are voting to go to class, of which we tried doing? Some voted, no, we're going back to class. And then us who were more radical said, then we're leaving this thing then. And clearly, then this is not a revolution.
Thank you, Mr. Madiba, for that robust response. I just want to highlight on what was said earlier on, that as young people, it is still our right and our responsibility to register, to vote, to participate, and very importantly, hold those that we vote for accountable so that we can inform a different narrative in our society. If not doing so, the status quo will remain. So let's use the power of our vote to make sure that we inform the change that we want to see. Ladies and gentlemen, let's appreciate our panelists, Dr. Thokozani and Mr. Madiba, for their presentation. Thank you very much. And thanks to all those that have contributed and asked questions based on that which was presented. We will perhaps, if there are any questions from our online community, deal with them at a later stage. I understand according to our program, we are even 10 minutes into the next session. I believe we're supposed to have a brief tea session for about 10 minutes. Can we still do that? So, ladies and gentlemen, tea is served outside. Let's make it brief the next 10 minutes so that we come back and get into the next session. I thank you very much. Society. If not doing so, the status quo will remain. So let's use the power of our
In session 3. Allow me to invite Ms. Ntsako Mhlanga, who is the award-winning social entrepreneur and education advocate, and Mr. Musa Mdunge, a political analyst, to ascend the stage. As they do so, allow me to also invite Medina Mola, who is the Regional Outreach Officer from the city of Johannesburg. Welcome, colleagues. Allow me to invite Ms. Ntsako Mhlanga, who is the award-winning social entrepreneur and education advocate, and Mr. Musa Mdunge, a political analyst, to ascend the stage. As they do so, allow me to also invite Medina Mola, who is the regional.
Such is the relay race. You know, the first one to take the baton normally determines the duration that actually informs the finish line. And it becomes even worse if you are going to be standing between the people and the matters of the stomach. Ladies and gentlemen, on the light note, good afternoon. As it's already been indicated, my name is Diana Mola. I am indeed the Regional Outreach Officer responsible for the city of Joburg. I am tempted to borrow on the greetings that are already being alluded to by my predecessors, but I see it prudent as well to acknowledge our Gauteng Provincial Electoral Officer, Tate Thabo Masemola, but also acknowledge the presence of our officials from the National Office, Dr. Rapo, as well as Mayor Mahisi. But most importantly, also acknowledge yourselves, the presenters, the audience. You are our very special distinguished guests, because this event wouldn't be happening had it not been of yourselves. And I want you to really note this, that we really take your inputs, really take your questions or any other thing that maybe think as it relates to the event very seriously, given that you can never exist if you are not part of us. Yes, indeed, this is another part of the race, and of course it seeks to explore, it seeks to focus on exploring the digital platforms for civic engagement and hybrid youth participation. It seeks to, look into the best use of our digital platforms in having to strengthen, in having to, broaden our scope, in having to make sure that we motivate our youth to really take part, because their vote matters. And of course, it has the purpose of having to give platform to social entrepreneurs to speak to the state of and the latest of the future development in the digital communications, as well as the risk and opportunities for this technology as they pose themselves, and also with an intention of having to provide some insight as it relates to electoral processes in the light of the current policy debates about the digital identity in the country. I think a lot has been said in terms of digital use of social media platforms. We've also had some input as it relates to misinformation, disinformation, the risks that may relate with using the media platform or the digital platforms in having to advance our electoral processes. And of course, there are good things, of course, that can be achieved out of those digital platforms as well. And we believe that through engagements, through discussions, through your inputs, those inputs are actually going to assist the IEC to even make things better and enable that indeed we are able to deliver as per our constitutional mandate. I am going to start the discussion with this phrase: an achievement is a bondage. It is a bondage that actually one can achieve even higher, but not only as in having to look, but having to make it possible. And of course, the possibilities are always in the hands of the people. So please encourage us, give us insight as it relates to the use of the digital platform. Ladies and gentlemen, please allow me to afford our speaker, Mensako Mhlanga. Mensako is an award-winning social entrepreneur and education advocate. She is also the CEO and founder of the Lenergy. She is a recipient of the awards from the Mail and Guardian Youth 200 and also an award winning for South Africa 2000. Mensako, this is all about yourself. Please enlighten us, share your expertise with us, and make it possible for us as South Africans, as the IEC, to look forward in having to use our digital platforms up to the utmost. The platform is yours. Can you give a round of applause, please, as she's going to engage us? CEO and founder of the Lenergy. She is a recipient of the awards.
Can I hear myself? Can you guys hear me? Are you excited to hear me? At least look excited. Beautiful faces need smiles on them. Yeah, I can, yeah. Oh, no, I can read from here. Thank you, my darling. Thank you so much. All right, good. So from here. Okay, sure. Okay, do you mind? They decided that black women needed to be elevated. So do you mind if I stand from here? Fantastic stuff. So good afternoon, everyone. Morning, afternoon, when 12 hits, you know, the regards are not so kind anymore. Thank you so much for coming here. I think your attendance shows a lot of active participation, the need for more information, trying to understand what is this digital to even begin with. When I was born, there was no digital, trying to understand what that even means. And I feel like, you know, from my perspective, as I was listening to the different speakers, the questions, the different responses, I couldn't help but feel like two people have phones, but there's no data and they're trying to send each other messages, right? And I'd like to position the IEC from that perspective and then the youth. But also, from your respective positions, I want you to just take a step back and think of yourself as a consumer of social media. Fantastic. Do we all have LinkedIn, Facebook, Instagram, WhatsApp, all the fun stuff? So we are chatting, you know, unlike our comrade Bekdal, who doesn't send a single WhatsApp, but at least we are all communicating in some way or form, right? Cool. I want us to look at the psychology behind participation. Why do we need to get young people to participate? I'd like to think that even with the example of this seminar, for example, there is a need for understanding. Young people, we want to understand you from the IEC. You guys are saying, listen, we here, we're trying to understand, we're trying to gauge you. We're trying to see what you guys are talking about. And then young people, it's almost like, guys, we've been trying to reach you. But now there's an interference in between those two. And I'd like to blame that interference of the lack of and think of yourself as a consumer of social media. Do we all have LinkedIn, Facebook, Instagram, WhatsApp, all the fun stuff? So we are chatting English as possible because the moment I hear these, you know, unlike our comrade that doesn't send a single WhatsApp, but at least we are all communicating in some way. So the heart, the human heart of the digital. I want us to look at the psychology. If our democracy had a heart, its rhythm would be do we need to get young people to participate? But its soul. I'd like to think that even with the example of this seminar, Whenever you get 30,000
There is a
likes on a
need for
post,
understanding.
you feel like,
Young
oh
people,
my
we want to
goodness,
understand.
this
How
guy
the
is
outcome.
famous,
That's it.
right?
Yeah, we're trying to
But if you
understand.
get
We're trying to
300
engage.
likes on a post,
We're trying to see
you
what
think,
you guys are
oh,
talking about.
you know,
And then young
it's
people,
not
it's
enough.
almost like, guys, we're
So
still trying
much.
to reach.
You feel like, no, it's not enough. I only got 300 posts. It's fine, you know. I need to maybe pay TikTok to sponsor the post. But ask yourself, if 300 people were to compliment you on that day and say, I like your post, would you not be overwhelmed? Exactly. So it's time now we start putting figures behind the likes. Technology has transformed the way we communicate, mobilize, and believe in democracy. These are the three themes that have existed in every single youth conglomerate we've had. So the 80s youth, the 70s youth, they had to communicate, mobilize, and believe in democracy, even when it didn't exist. So why are we having a problem with communicating something that is now in existence? It's because we're not putting the humans behind the post. Okay? Please stop me at any time. I'm in education, so I love teaching, I love questions, I love interactions. So please make sure that you understand. Even if it's just one word, I'm very patient. I'm more than willing to assist you with that. So let's talk about the psychology of digital participation. Let's say there's a trending post. Kaizer Chiefs won a game. I don't want to get into sports politics. Kaizer Chiefs won a game. You're a Kaizer Chiefs fan. The first thing you're instinctively doing is liking and commenting. Why? Because that's your community, right? That's your sense of connection. So what happens now when you take that connection further? What do? You express it now. You say, nah, like, post, comment, make sure everyone can see that Kaizer Chiefs won, right? And then what does it do as well? It creates an agency. What if you wanted to create a certain opinion about them? What do you do then? You start commenting, saying, this is the best team in the world. This is the best group in the world. These are the basics of human needs that the digital brings out within us. Connection. All of us here want to belong. I love the Zulus. They will not spare a chance in giving you itagazelo zabo. They need to tell you where they belong, because humans thrive from a sense of connection. So isn't it beautiful that we have a group of young people that want to belong? Isn't that great? Let's move on to more great emotions, right? Expression. Ooh, big one in our generation. Expression. You need to hear what I'm saying. I want to be heard. Very challenging one, because this is where things get a little murky. Expression. Especially in our constitution, it has the freedom of this very thing. But what is expression? We're just saying, I want to be heard. I'm telling you that I want vanilla ice cream because I want you to hear me, because I believe that you can deliver that to me. Correct? Then agency. Believe it or not, for as long as all of us are on social media, we all want to make a difference. Be it good difference and a bad one. We've seen a lot of good intentional tweets, and then it just goes short-lived. Because the I want to make a difference, we have not clearly mapped out how we do this. Okay, we still good? Fantastic. So, technology amplifies these needs, turning emotion into movement. Our tweets into protest, hashtags into headlines, and content into change. So we're trying to bring more intention in what we do in the media. Right? So let's talk about them. Hashtag Fees Must Fall came up a lot, and I think for the interest of everybody, let's use it as an example, right? It's quite sensitive to our generation. One of the, I'm going to use the R word carefully, revolutionary Fees Must Fall protest that has happened, and like the world just woke up, right? And said, how are people not accessing free education? We've never seen where kids are actually saying we need education. The world was in shock, right? But now, the beauty about it is that we get criticized a lot on this hashtag. We say it was just a hashtag. We forget the young lives that missed school. Their futures delayed. They did not attend class. We think about those who have graduated. What about those who didn't? Who didn't make it? That's a form of protest to me. I don't know. Could be wrong. We can argue about that later. So now let's talk about this, because in everything, and you also have to understand with every system that we bring in, we have to kind of look at the opportunities and the shadows, right? There is great opportunity for success within the IEC to go digital. Wow, sounds like a great headline at one of the media outlets of the, other color. But it's very interesting for us to look at the opportunities without looking at the shadows. It's important for us to look at both. Okay? So digital activism has created unprecedented access, but also emotional and ethical risks. Meaning, I could, as I step off stage, type, the IEC are so lazy. I can't stand them. Because I'm a verified person, that would fly the entire day, right? But is that not a risk now? So it's important also, when we are choosing the people who are the voices of the IEC, what are they talking about? What type of audience do they bring in? Do they bring in an angry but open audience? Someone who's willing to challenge people, someone who's willing to, bring the word out, and they also trust them. That's also another thing, guys. Look, the average campaign, of course, you do need the influencers with the hundreds and thousands of followers. But do not leave behind the young people who have 1,000, but they get 1,000 likes, 1,000 comments, 1,000 shares. The people who mobilize within their communities. It's very, very important. We love the top influencers, we love them, and you guys are great for numbers. But if you're going to talk impact, we're going to think beyond just numbers. We're going to think about people's perceptions. Who can communicate that clearly, efficiently, and ethically? So some of the opportunities, I guess, empowerment through visibility. So you know that if you have a paid campaign for like a year, you guys can run your different messages on social media. So you get the visibility that you need, right? Global solidarity. We can all just agree that the sun should rise every morning at 7 a.m. and everyone agrees, and then the sun now is going to be rising at 7 a.m. every day, right? And then rapid mobilization. So if you need someone to agree on something right now, you need 1,000 people to agree now, social media. What type of audience do they? If you need people to say everyone is wearing green tomorrow, they're doing it, right? So that's an opportunity that the right message can reach the right people and do the right thing, right? There is. How many fake stories have been released? How many fake news has been released? How many times did a story get manipulated? Someone could take just a clip of what you were saying about the fellow comrades. They could just take that and then put on social media and say the IEC supports blah, blah, blah. I don't want to create headlines for them. But someone could do that. Unfortunately, the media in its nature has been manipulated back in National Party times. So this is not new to us, but it's getting worse. Why? Because people have the right to express their views as they wish on their platforms. Okay? So why don't we mobilize the right people? Not the big ones. And sure, the big ones. But who are the community people? Who are those people that have influence in their community? Because that also brings down the risk. Then, digital fatigue. I don't know who here is in charge of social media, PR, or marketing. Hands, or even in the team liaises with them. Genuinely, I send the biggest heart and hug to anyone in PR, comms, and marketing in this generation. I've never seen opinions change this quickly. And I cannot imagine having to keep up with that on a day-to-day basis. So what do we do now as organizations? Not just the IEC, because a lot of you represent different organizations. So I want us to take this back. What do we do then? We get young voices. We get the people who are credible. We screen them. Hopefully they're not our close friends so that we can, harikeneng. No. Let's get credible people and say, guys, what are you talking about? What do you like? Because last week I thought we were all having kotas for some, but now all of a sudden you guys are saying, no, we're eating healthy. Like, help me. Our opinions are changing rapidly. Our views, our perceptions, the things that we desire change every single day. So it means PR, marketing, comms teams, you need to be on your Zoom. There's a new one called Clark It. And I hope we're clacking it. If you don't know what Clark It means, do your research very quickly. Because that's how we're talking now. Social media, PR, or marketing? Okay. So we need to learn how to balance this out, right? It's a lot of ideologies that I'm throwing at you, a lot of words that I'm throwing at you, a lot of digital what. Let's just bring it down to the simplest part, right? Psychologically, we must learn to balance connection and critical thinking. One of those two words. Those two words, I just want to pause. My dear people, this happens a lot on Facebook. Someone posts some random story and then you immediately screenshot, share it on your WhatsApp. That is fake news. Where did you credit the source? Who is the source? Is the source accredited? Did you do any of those things? And say, guys, chances are we didn't. We just found it spicy. We wanted to be cool for the day. So you know what? Boom. We're going to share that. It's spicy now, especially with all sorts of commissions happening right now, the political news that's happening right now. It's very easy for us to kind of just fall with what the crowd is saying, right? I hope you understand this. I'm not trying to drag you, I swear. It's also important for us to keep evidence. Find new ways to make an IEC story IEC, so that no one else who is also slightly blue could take your story and manipulate it. How do we make sure that the information you put out is accredited? What does that look like? Does it mean that it must be signed? Does it mean we need to do more video content? Maybe the young people want to see actual faces behind the statements. We don't have time to read the media statements. Those are for the journalists. Let's keep that for them. We want to see you. I want to see you talk about the fact that you care about me voting. That makes an even bigger difference. I want to feel you. I want you to say, Machita, oh, I feel like I'm a part of your circle of friends. You know? So leaders, I know it's uncomfortable. I know it's weird. Because you grew up, no one mentioned this in leadership school, that now we have to be content creators. But the reality is, if you want to speak to the people, the young people, where are they? They're on social media. You can't speak full-on sentences with a baby, right? You have to crawl with the baby. With a toddler, then you can start increasing your vocabulary. With a 10-year-old, then you have to start increasing it a little bit. With a 16-year-old, so you can't speak there, parliamentary discourse, with young people. Talk in our language. And it's quite nice now. I'm just hoping everyone will clock it. Okay? So the one thing we do need to ask ourselves as the young people, so now I'm holding us accountable because I can't just put this on you, right? Is what does our digital identity look like with humanity? How do I make myself a person behind my tweet? When I say you're a loser, I can do that, log off and be done. But if I say you are one of the greatest leaders ever via video to you, and I say you are one of the greatest leaders to ever exist, doesn't that land differently? Doesn't that create more of an identity? I'm showing you that I've recognized your path in leadership and I'm acknowledging it as a young person. So young people, yeah, it's our time now. Because it was nice putting them accountable. Let's hold ourselves accountable now. What does it look like? Let's not confuse everyone. Let's decide what it looks like. Okay? Who owns our data? I could post today that I liked chicken for lunch, right? Someone has recorded that, turned it into an A word called an algorithm, and then now all the chicken advertisements are coming up. All of them are coming up now. Why are we not questioning that? Who's owning our data? Who is this algorithm person? Or do we just feel free to just share our opinions out there? Okay? And who decides who we believe in? Who gets to decide that? Is it not us? So should we not communicate who we believe in more? So that we decide who we actually believe in? And also, does technology build trust in democracy or does it quietly replace it? Do we still need the physical voting stations? Absolutely. The digital world also comes with a very dark side. So we cannot just completely eradicate the analog as if it was not working. And it's also okay, IEC, to make a couple of mistakes. I'm sorry that in the world of public sector, you're not really told that a lot of times. That if you make even a slight mistake of making a ballot 3 different colors, you confuse everybody. You put a whole lot of parties, confuse everybody. It's okay. Because then we meet up like this and we say, okay, guys, what worked, what didn't, how do we make it work? And also, just a mental note to all humans out there who can read. Please understand that change management is also a big factor with bringing in the digital democracy. We are not that susceptible to change. Humans naturally despise anything that has to do with something different to what they were normally doing. Okay? So, the one thing I do want you to know is that we're not passive people. We're the most active generation. But I need you guys to give us a conversation. Give us something to talk about. Ask the questions there on social media. Say, hey guys, what worked last year? Simple. One tweet from the IEC. Boom. Hi youth, I want to speak to anyone between the ages of 0 and 35. What worked? That could get you more responses than any other video campaign you could ever think of. Do you know why? You finally left it in our hands. You gave us the choice, the agency to make a difference. By doing what? Establishing the connection in order to express. Okay? And then, now I want us to do this in our own personal lives, right? I don't think whatever we do publicly can ever exist unless we fix the personal. Ask yourself one thing. What is the one thing that you do on social media that is absolutely terrible? On your personal social media. That is absolutely terrible. It's the risk you need to watch. Are you someone who just shares? When I forwarded, you forward. Hey? Share, you shared. You one of those, when I share, no matter what, screenshot, WhatsApp, boom. Are you someone who doesn't record much information? Maybe you're just such a passive person. You just passively scroll, you passively. Pay attention to that. Second thing, what opportunity do you need to build on? Maybe when you post your videos at the gym, everyone just responds to you. So maybe that's a good opportunity to mention one voter fact while taking a video at the gym. What are some of the things that work for you? What works for the IEC? Maybe when you guys ask more questions, when you post more videos, when you do more challenges, something, maybe feeling connected, making young people feel connected. What is that one opportunity you need to build on? And then what is the one action we can all commit to today? Even if it means just reread where the source comes from. You gave us the choice. That's it. Small little action. Or maybe if someone says, you know what, I actually believe in civic and civil education. Maybe let me just post one tweet a day about it. One fact that young people can learn from me. One thing, one tiny thing that you can do to help. And this becomes a mirror and a map. Because we need to reflect on how we think, feel, and act in our own digital democracy. In our own pages, on our own platforms. And if you act like that, chances are there's 1,000 people that do the exact same thing. Okay? All right, as we close, our generation does not wait for permission to participate. We create new ways to belong. So ask yourself, how do we, as young people, belong in the IEC? How do we belong there? Do we play the digital arm? Are we the ones you guys just invite us to just ask questions? Or you just have a panel of young people and you just ask, you say, guys, what's going on? Just educate us, please. What role do we play? Technology is our stage, but humanity is still our story. There are people behind each hashtag. We know the justice force. Every time I see a justice for, my heart breaks. Because I know it's a hashtag that trends, but there's someone involved. Someone is a victim. And let's build out democracy. That's not just digital, but human. It's human. It's emotionally intelligent and alive with purpose. Because democracy doesn't live in laws, it lives within us. Thank you.
Wow, what an insightful deliberation. I think some of the things we may be aware of, but we somewhat have a tendency of having to ignore them or maybe even take advantage of. It becomes a situation where a person has got to make a choice and make sure that that which you do has an impact, whether directly or indirectly. And of course, as it relates to the digital platforms, I think that is the one mechanism that is very much accessible, especially as it relates to our youth. And yes, indeed, another part that we might have been ignoring relates to the psychology as it relates to digital participation. And it's the one part that, of course, if fully used, it can somewhat have an effect, especially as it relates to our young ones. Connectivity, expression, and agency, definitely. We are very much educated. You gave us some insight. I know and believe that by the time we move out of here, we are going to be obliged in a way in having to have mechanisms that are going to enable us to, widen our scope as it relates to our civic education methods and approaches that we are using. Thank you very much. Colleagues, please allow me. I'm going to request that let us, in the meantime, whilst our presenters are presenting on presenting on what they need to send the message to us. So we should write the questions somewhere. I'm looking at the time, and instead of just allowing for questions, let us rather welcome Daten Dunge to do his presentation as well. And at a later stage, of course, we're going to have a combined QA. And of course, when you have to ask questions, be very direct, indicate as to who are you posing the question to. Daten Dunge is he is a political analyst. And of course, he is a PhD candidate, and he has analyzed and is continuously sharing his insight as it relates to the current state of affairs, as it relates to our political trajectories. And he is very much active in having to discuss, some of the policies that inform our political processes within the country. And we are really honored that to have you in our presence. Please, the platform is yours. Enlighten us as it relates to the topic that you have been requested that you should engage us in.
All
Ladies
right.
and gentlemen, please give him a round of applause.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you so much to the facilitator, to my fellow panelists. Thank you so much for that. My fellow panelists over there, your presentations were really, really informative. Can I get the, there we go. There we go. All right. Okay. All right. So what I'll be looking at today is exploring the relationship between traditional and non-traditional participation. And what lessons can we draw in terms of not only global politics, as it were, but as well as diplomacy? And what is South Africa's role in an evolving global arena? I think, ladies and gentlemen, you can agree with me that we are living in interesting times, right? And part of these times, a lot of questions are being asked about what is South Africa's role, not only in terms of international relations, but South Africa is a country that views itself as a fledgling, thriving democracy. Questions are being asked about how we shape the conversation from the role of democracies. It's very, very important. And what I endeavor to do here is to look at this relationship, because it's not in silos. It's not just the social media. But at the end of the day, you've got to get people to actually go to the ballot box. What does that conversation look like, ladies and gentlemen? All right. Oh man, technology is hitting me. All right, there we go. My word, I'm revealing my not so much youthful age. All right, so the first one, of course, has been spoken to by our panelists, is the issue of traditional participation. We know that it involves the voting process, it involves party membership, and quite interestingly, if I may make a side point here, it is interesting that as we're talking about youth participation, that none of the traditional parties are in this room. I'm sorry, I have to take a dig on them. because they are part and parcel of the strategy that the IEC needs to be able to depend upon in order to drive voter numbers up. The fact that they are not here is quite telling. And running for office. Now, this one is an important one. In the car driving with one of your IEC officials, I raised an interesting point. I asked, I said, you know, I find it interesting that the voter age in South Africa is 18, but we allow kids to decide on what they need to do with their sexual organs at 16. We allow kids to decide on subjects at the age of 15. So we trust our young people to choose subjects that will shape the rest of their futures. But we say to them, from age 15 to 18, listen, you're not politically mature to tell us who your counselor is. I think there's a contradiction there. All right? And it is a key, this issue of running for office is key, because one of the things and the strategies I think that the IEC can employ is if we get this issue of voter age right, and we start to drive participation from, forget high school, that's late. How about primary school? Because really, that's where conscientization ought to begin. One of my panelists spoke about the Black consciousness movement, right? Those things are not just a caveat in a history book. Those things need to be the driving thing that moves us in seeing political participation as equal to the bread and butter issues of daily living. In other words, the same way I go buy airtime, the same way I go and bet on Kaiser Chiefs versus Pirates, there needs to be that level of excitement about political participation. How do you drive that? Running for office. I was saying to the IEC official when we were driving here, I said to her, at the peak of the British Empire in the 18th century, we can say a lot of things about the British. Let's pack it. But the one thing I find interesting about the British Empire is at the peak of its empire in the 18th century, they elected a prime minister at the age of 24. The name was William Pitt the Younger. The very same 24-year-old William Pitt the Younger, guess what he did? He defeated Napoleon in the Napoleonic Wars. I'm saying to you, if a country stuck in the 18th century where we think Abantu Bakdala are old, conservative, well, guess what? Not so much. Because if you study history properly, you then begin to see that the fixation of old leadership is actually a 20th and a 21st century thing. That in actual fact, if you look throughout history, young people have not just been at the forefront of complaining, they have shaped policy. And running for office is something we've got to get right. And that may require us changing, ladies and gentlemen, the way in which we see the role of RCLs at school. That's a key one. Non-traditional engagement. This is key because I believe it is the thing that feeds the other. Non-traditional engagements, of course, we know protests, digital activism, grassroots mobilization. When we think about things like Fees Must Fall, Am I Next, Black Lives Matter, the Arab Spring itself, right? In many ways, for the Middle East to look like it's looking right now is a result of non-traditional engagement. If we push this up, we can drive the formal political engagement. But guess what? It's not just social media. You've got to meet young people where they are. What do I mean? Meaning, it requires you to go to ARD. It requires you to go to all the spots where young people are at. It requires you to seek them out. And that's why I go back to this issue of why we allow 18-year-olds to vote and not 16-year-olds to vote, when the hood is full of 16-year-olds chilling at Kasi doing nothing. Global and local dynamics. Next point. We need to examine global movements alongside South Africa's unique political participation landscape. The fact is, ladies and gentlemen, all of these campaigns that are not happening in silos. If they were, the Gen Z protests that began in Naples, that have shifted things in Madagascar, wouldn't be happening the way they are. And as a country, we need to be conscious that what is another country's political movement all of a sudden becomes yours. But how do you shape the conversation? What is key, ladies and gentlemen, for us to get all of these things right, guess what? It's inclusive governance. It's not just about having a government of the people, a government for the people, but an actual government where the people lead. Again, I bring my conversation with the IEC official. I brought up the issue of America. I said, Madam IEC, do you know what Thomas Jefferson said when he was asked by a journalist, Mr. Jefferson, sir, what is it that you have given us as American people at the signing of the Declaration of Independence? And Thomas Jefferson gives them an interesting answer. He says, well, son, what we have bequeathed you is a republic, if you can keep it. In other words, he notes, we've given you political institutions, a political system, but it is not enough that we've given you 1994. Can you keep 1994? And that is the question, ladies and gentlemen, we've got to be honest with ourselves. Have we done a good job as a collective to keep this republic? Anyway, Anikoda. All right, ladies and where am I? All right.
Yeah.
Going further, traditional participation involves structured activities. Of course, as you said, like voting, like joining a political party, like forming political discourse. But it's important for us to not forget that non-traditional methods are key, ladies and gentlemen, in driving the kind of education participation that we need, not only from young people, but from older people. And here's another thing I think we haven't included in this whole discussion. The conversations that happen at the dinner table, Batandegayo. Let us not forget that those are very, very important. Are the older generation also not part of the factor that is driving young people not to vote? Because when I chill with my friends' uncles at a wedding, and our debate is whether apartheid was better than South Africa, than 1994, it's nothing sort of amazing how many older people say apartheid is better. And then we wonder why the voter empathy among young people is so low. Because if you guys are saying to us that oppression was better, why the hell should I bet on democracy? Marangikoda. Next point. It is important to understand the interplay between these methods, because if we don't get it right, we will lock so many young people out. The fact is, as much as social media is important, it is the thing today, we are all clocking it. The fact is, many young people cannot clock it. And what does that look like? And we've got to be honest with ourselves on that, ladies and gentlemen. Perhaps presenting global case studies. Of course, as I said, we have the Arab Spring. Of course, originally the Arab Spring began in 2010 after the Tunisian street vendors' self-mutilation, triggered widespread protest. Here was a person, an ordinary person, who said, enough is enough. What are we doing, ladies and gentlemen, to make sure that young people don't have to get to that level in which to be heard, but in the spaces that we've created, we allow young people to be babodle. That is very important. The role of social media was quite critical because it drove and mobilized citizens by spreading information, but it also allowed a coordination of protests across the countries. And that is why I'm saying one country's hashtag all of a sudden becomes yours. And this is the lesson South Africa has got to learn, particularly because I suspect, this is just a suspicion, that the Gen Z protests are going to touch down here. Marasikoda. Diverse outcomes. Initial regime change was dramatic. It happened. We saw it. Many dictators were removed. The very military leaders that some of you want us to be under were removed. And some nations faced conflict or authoritarian regimes later. Why? Because though they cried for change, but because democracy was not etched into the Arab value system, democracy has not picked up in that region. And that's not just something that we've got to understand here in the South, but politicians have got to understand, given the role South Africa plays in diplomacy and international relations. It is important to understand that institutions matter. IEC officials, you matter. Very important. You are the institution. Sustaining democratic change requires strong institutions alongside a digital activism, and that's very key. Another example, Black Lives Matter. We all know what happened there, right? Black Lives Matter, BLM, began in 2013 after Trayvon Martin's shooting. right, led to a grassroots activism. But here's what Black Lives Matter also did. It also made Republicans of Donald Trump understand the role and importance of social media. You want to understand why Donald Trump won 2016? Why Americans are fixated with the guy even in 2024? It's because he understood where to find young people. He was at Joe Rogan's podcast. He was at different platforms. And that's another thing we haven't spoken about. What is the role of podcasts in today's age? Because there's a danger here where podcasts are being seen as a space for opinions. That's what they'll say. Hi guys, we're just sharing opinions. Forgetting that those opinions shape and influence political direction. It matters what Mqobi says when he says, Mqobi, don't vote. It matters. I can tell you what Shaka Ilembe who didn't. Okay? It matters what Saul says. It matters what these guys say because they are now the people shaping where young people are getting their education. It's no longer Newsroom Africa. It's no longer ENCA. I love them. I work with them, but they are not the ones who are clocking it. Podcasts are the new age influencer, and there's something there that we've got to see and be observant about. Hong Kong, let's see, because sometimes you think the Asians are peaceful. The Asians get busy. Hong Kong protests. In Hong Kong, the young people led and drove protests which began due to fears of an extradition bill that would reduce Hong Kong's autonomy. In other words, the young people of Hong Kong said, listen, we don't care about the history of past, that Hong Kong used to be part of China. This is what we want now. And they were instrumental in driving and ensuring that Xi Jinping, who normally doesn't even listen to his own young people in China, he was forced to listen to the people of Hong Kong. That is the power of political participation, that it can even make a dictator sit down, listen, take stock, and be conscious of their tactics. The key thing about this is that it was a creative resistance. Umbrellas, for example, and laser pointers were used as symbolic tools against surveillance and repression. So they were very conscious of symbolism. And I think that's important for the IEC to think about. What is the symbolism you're trying to draw young people towards? That when they see the symbol, it moves in them the automatic inclination to say, I've got to get in and I've got to get locked in. Do you have that symbol? That's very, very important. The impact of it, well, guess what? Xi Jinping failed to influence the government because why? The bill withdrawal occurred, but national security law later limited freedom significantly. That's a conversation for another day. But what I'm trying to show you there is that when young people get together, when young people are allowed space, these are the kind of results that happen, even in countries where we say democracy doesn't work. And lastly, let's look at South Africa. South Africa is a fledgling, robust democracy with a democratic framework that works, where strong democracy, regular elections are held. And that is why 2024 was so important. The fact that ANC dropped votes was we were able to then test the maturity of our democracy. Are we a democracy because ANC remains in power? Or are we a democracy because this thing is a gazine? And 2024 proved that to us. Traditional political participation is a very important part of how South Africans get involved. We see it with the number of parties that are involved. We see it with the public consultations that are held yearly. This is very, very important. And I would argue for the IEC, it's even more important that you get jiggy in the schools, that you have a presence in the school. That's very, very important. Even if you have a budget to employ 2 or 3 young people in each school, why don't you? We see where all the money is going. This is a vested interest that should drive voter participation. When you have IEC mascots, if we should call them that, who are able to drive the message, it becomes important. All right? But what have we seen, of course, in South Africa? We've seen a decline in voter turnout. And ladies and gentlemen, I'll be very simple with you. The reason we have low voter turnout is that the democratic dividend isn't working. Young people are not seeing a dividend out of their experience of democracy. And that is what we've got to drive fundamentally. The reason why young people don't vote, I was telling the IEC official, I said, it's simple. Young people don't have assets to protect. So why the hell should I vote? Simple. Older people, you have the assets to protect. You have therefore vested interest in the voting process. So how do we ensure that we're able to reveal to young people what is this asset that all of you as young people are custodians of and must protect? And I think we need to drive that message more better. All right. Lastly, we need resilient democratic institutions. The IEC cannot do everything. We know that. But the IEC is important. And we must protect this institution from anyone who would try to use it to shift or influence the democratic process in a way that does not reflect our interests. And lastly, ladies and gentlemen, before I conclude, I'm sorry I'm taking long. We must understand that South Africa's roots for non-traditional participation lies in our experience of apartheid. The fact is, when young people think that throwing a rock can get a better answer than a cross against a party, it's telling you something. And I think as the IEC, there's a job that you need to do, but that you need to do with all of us together in order to ensure that young people understand that this is not just the only mode. There's more that we can do. But of course, organizations like Fees Must Fall, Am I Next were key in mobilizing citizens on issues of education, in mobilizing citizens in terms of gender violence issues. Even for us as men, I believe if we're honest, there is now been a shift, or at least a consideration now, culturally, in how we think. And we owe it to these sort of movements for doing that. Social media, public demonstrations, and symbolic actions highlight systemic social issues. The key here is not to think that my issue is more important than your issue. It's understanding that by virtue of our South Africanness, our citizenship, both have space to be. And lastly, non-traditional participation challenges power structures. That's key. It promotes accountability for democracy. I see y'all who are loving Traore and want to be under a military dictatorship. Ask the Russians how that is going. Ask the Chinese how that is going. Yes, they may have the economic dividend, but the fact that when I talk to my girlfriend in China, there are certain things I cannot say because it's gonje. But here, Ramaphosa don't care. I can flow. I can say whatever. And I think there's something to that, ladies and gentlemen, because the danger with the militarism option that people are crying for, and I'll tell you what's the danger. It assumes that Traore will be in power forever. It's Traore today, tomorrow it's another asshole. Sorry for my language. Right? But the key thing for you to understand there is there's a danger, because that militarism thing, Africa has tried it, ladies and gentlemen. Have we not been here before? And why do we want to rehash the wheel? It clearly has not worked. If it did, there are other African countries today be far better than South Africa. Why are they not? Who have had democracy, independence for far longer. I'm just saying. What are the challenges, ladies and gentlemen, quickly? The challenges in political participation, disillusionment, very key. The digital divide hinders effective political engagement in South Africa because the political landscape is fragmented by coalitions and populism. And that's a very, very important thing. But where are the opportunities? The opportunities for leadership can create strong civil society and constitutional protections, empowering South Africa to lead in both regional and global political arenas. Because whether you like it or not, ladies and gentlemen, South Africa cannot ignore its responsibility. And lastly, what we need is inclusive democratic engagement. Embracing both these traditional and non-traditional political participation, it can enhance democracy, and guess what? It can promote inclusive governance. And I'll leave it there. But the message I wanted to leave all of you with is we need to think consciously again. Are we where young people are? That's the question you've got to ask yourself. Are we where young people are? And if we're not, then that explains why voter empathy is the way it is. I shall rest it there.
Thank you very much, Ntate Mdungwe. Thank you for an insightful deliberation. for giving us the comparison as it relates to our traditional participation versus the non-traditional participation. But more so, we are really grateful that you also giving us, the comparative studies that will relate to, giving us some means in having to make sure that we encourage our youth in having to participate in election. But more so, leaving us with questions. Why is it that kids are able to pursue certain curriculum, certain lessons, certain subjects at an earlier age and only wait for a certain age, 18, for us as South Africans to take part in having to strengthen the democracy, our constitutional democracy, by casting a vote? Maybe that's food for thought.
Food for thought, and considering next year is the 50th anniversary of 1976. Not all those young people were 18 plus, Bafet.
Yeah.
It was kids who are at the age of 16, 15, 14 who have shaped the whole political movement. So the fact that we then say the very generation of 1976 says an 18 and 17-year-old can't vote, there's a hypocrisy there. But anyway,
it actually also, somewhat links with the role that the media platforms play. Many times we find our kids busy on social media platforms. They have an influence. They have the capability of having to tell people stories, whether they're true, founded or not founded. And at some point, we then say, these are serious matters of democracy. You are not necessarily allowed to participate in at a particular age. Yeah, it is indeed something to think over. And I'm really pleased because you also tapped into the diverse outcomes, and I want to believe that given the power that youth have, unless fully utilized, then we are not at all going to reach a point where we hugely improve the voter turnout, because then if we somewhat isolate them, we don't necessarily encourage them, we don't necessarily give them the power or even give over, ownership as it relates to voting. Yes, indeed, we have the responsibility of having to encourage robust engagement. Let's make a comparison. Talk about social activity. Talk about engaging in partying and so on. They are there in the majority. Why don't you then make voting fashionable as much as it could in terms of partying? Thank you very much for your deliberations. Ladies and gentlemen, we are so much under pressure as it relates to time. And I need to open for questions, right? And I indicated that, please, as it relates to your questions, be very specific as to who are you posing the question to. And of course, we are going to be doing that with appreciation of recommendation or just input. Maybe let us not just restrict it to questions. There could be something else that you need to add into that is somewhat going to give us a value as it relates to the deliberations that were given by our presenters, and which is still much appreciative. Shall we take hands? Question, input, recommendation. You are most welcome to share those.
Yeah, thank you so much to both Musa and Nontsako for the contributions that they made. The two comments that I have, the first one, it's in regard to the matter of our podcast. And of course, in 2025 and beyond, whether we like it or whether we want to accept it or not, podcasts are the future of this country. And my comment is based on specifically to the controversial one, the general himself, whom we call most of us Mqobi, in which a lot of people, they are in conflict amongst themselves, and most organizations, they are in conflict. Do they want to associate themselves with him, or should they not associate themselves with him? The reason why I'm saying this is because the platform of Podcast and Chill, it has hundreds and thousands of young people, if not millions of young people, who religiously engage the content that Mqobi and Lusol they share. So my question is to both speakers, Guti, or I direct it to Ntsako, Uguti, is it a safe platform maybe for an institution like the IEC to share information or to associate themselves with an institution like a podcast and chill? So this is a question that I can direct it to you, Ntsako. And then my very short point, Enyo, would say in the past couple of days as a civic champion with Activate, when we're engaging on voter education in my community, 60% of young people whom we've engaged, those who are discouraged to vote is mostly due to a lack of information. They associate the IEC with government institution, they associate the IEC with political parties. Specifically, they associate the IEC with the African National Congress. So whenever we do engagement with young people, the age group that I was facilitating with, it was young people from the ages of 16 to 24. So I need to, I always need to emphasize that I am not from any political organization. So I needed to say, no, I'm not from any political organization, but we are just sharing information with you as the youth. So I think even in digital spaces, most of this information is something that is shared on social media, because there's this assumption that anyone who speaks maybe on behalf of the IEC or who speaks about voter education, it's someone who is mostly associated with the African National Congress. So I think there needs to be more education when it comes to that, so that we need, young people need clarity on that one.
And thanks for your input, sir. We're going to take that as a comment. We're going to take that as a recommendation as it relates to us having to enhance our interaction with the communities. And I must assure you that it is noted.
Thank you, ma'am. Good afternoon, colleagues. My name is Labohang Zimba. I am from the youth network called Activate Change Drivers, and currently we've just completed a series of in-community workshops incapacitating first-time voters on just guiding them. What is local government? What is the role of local government? And how can you participate in making sure that you are making local government work? Historically, we've been participating through with the IEC as the election observers. And I think that as an organization has placed us in a position where we have influence in our communities. And I guess I would want to go back to a statement that was shared earlier to say there is a need for IEC to partner with grassroots organizations that are already doing civic education, because already there is a blueprint that we have already created and relationships within communities. And we just need that institution of authority to rubber stamp the work that we are doing, because alone we cannot do it all. So there is a need for support from the IEC, so that as grassroots organizations, we are also given that boost, so that even what we are sharing with the public is credible, because it comes with credible institutions. I'd like to maybe make a comment, and part of this comment is that education starts in a household. And with education starting in a household, it means our collective civic or active citizenry responsibility is making sure that we are imparting this information firstly where we are before we can leave our households. And that, number one, I think it is a cause of this youth voter apathy that we are seeing, because within household conversations around participating in electoral processes is not strong enough. I come from a generation where for my first vote, I was told, in this household, we are playing to this tune. That was my first introduction to participating in democratic processes. And I guess we need to go back to basics and maybe stop moving the responsibility of education to institutions, but a home as it stands, it is an institution where first education comes from. Earlier, I wanted to just ask, even though I would be having a conversation with Professor Thokozani around, there's so much research that is available. Yet, I think there's a gap between taking that research and informing decisions based on the research that's there. Already we've noted through numerous presentation that we have the youth not in employment, education and training. And we also highlighted to say youth who are already in varsity or educational institutions are the ones that at most are voting. And how are we not moving our strategies and making sure that this lower pool of non-participation, our focus is given there so that we can boost this lower pool so that it can inform what other young people who are already busy with something are already doing. Thank you.
Thanks for your input, sir. Thank you very much. Can we have somebody else?
Greetings again. My name is Swarelo Mahlaban. I'm in the youth sector also. Actually, this is my facilitator from Activate. I'm also Activate Code 2019. She just said to me, Swarelo, why you didn't say you are from Activate? then it's important to say you are from Activate because some of things we learned from Activate. Because Activate they show us why we should vote. They don't just say go and vote. They tell us why councillors they've been elected. They've been elected for IDP. They've been elected to look out for people so that they can recount on service delivery what they are doing in the ward. They also help us with the demarcation, how it works. Yes. So I want to come to the question that Miss Mhlanga says, Uguti, in our different spaces, which role do we play? On the 4th of October, we're doing a voters education in my ward. I'm in this ward. So I just invited to come and facilitate and give youth the education to come and vote. Expectation it was 100 plus youth, but we have managed roughly to get 45 youth that attended the event. So I go straightly to IEC and said, please help us with some resource when we have a request for doing such events. And my question, it says, as it goes to also Ms. Mhlanga, the online registration, online voting, it's going to be implemented on our next local election. Yes or no? That's what I'm looking for. Then also they can share also reason why it's not yet implemented, because youth they are looking forward to that, and because we also communicate about it, we can't wait to do that online voting. And also the question the question that posted by Mr. Musa says, are we where young people are? I can say as the IEC, IEC is everywhere, because I also represent the IEC when it coming to facilitating voters to help youth. Also, I can say IEC is everywhere. The problem is resource. They can put four facilitators or democracy educators who can educate people, while knowing those wards are plus or minus 40. So how many schools that are there? So how many people can you cover to give them that education? So that's why I mentioned part of resources, that they must put more resources to go out, because we go straightly to that 6% that doctor was talking about. Yes. Then I also add that Mr.
Thank you very much.
Mr. Mdunga said age system is also killing us. Why I'm saying this, I also agree with him that young people must start to vote at the age of 16. Why I'm saying this is because of also after 5 years they are getting affected to what the decisions that are made of those who've been voted. So is those things that they're getting, and they can start to understand why these things are happening. Because now when they go to varsity, that's where they started to understand why they should vote. While they have to get this while they are still in high school. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. I'm going to be, I think you're going to be the last one, because like I indicated earlier on that you are really under serious time constraints. And please let us try and avoid a situation where we're going to be repeating things that are already being mentioned. Collaboration, it is there. Definitely, we do collaborate with everyone, and we welcome any other person that needs to work with us, because the intention is to work and give information as much as we can go. And yeah, thanks for your being keen in having to work with us. So we're going to take you. And colleagues, please allow me to suppress you. We are really seriously under pressure as it relates to time.
No, thank you, Chair. I think I'll be very fast. I think I just want to. What I was talking about maybe the people in China or Russia being oppressed, and if whether democracy is working in Africa. And we have to ask ourselves a question: has democracy really worked in Africa? And I'll ask you, and I'm going to say this. I heard one person saying that they've got a family member who says they're not going to vote because they work in the hospitality industry, they're a chef, but they're not going to vote because all those hospitality spaces have been taken by foreign nationals. I visit Russia a lot. There's order in the country. You don't just throw away things on the street. If this is what the country is doing, they all do it. And I interact with a lot of journalists in Russia and China. They might not agree with President Putin, but if the country has to go in a particular way, everybody has to agree with it. And that goes back to the national pride. That goes back to the black consciousness we're talking about. If you look at China's unemployment rate amongst the youth, I think it's 5.2. You look at Russia, it's 2.1. You look at South Africa, it's 4.6. Then if you say that the Russians are being oppressed, are we not being oppressed here because we don't have jobs? 46% of our people don't have jobs. Then if you are saying that a country with 2.1, 5.2 unemployment is dictating, then that means that democracy itself is the biggest dictator. And I'll tell you why. Well, now that the discussion around energy, and I love that even the new government now is now beginning to talk about nuclear. The country must go nuclear, which is good. Everybody agrees that nuclear is the way. But who says no? It's Western-funded NGOs. Because why? We've allowed them. It's democracy. Now, if we're a country that had order and said, this is what we're doing, we all say we want nuclear, there's no NGO that's going to come. And there's no judiciary that's going to agree with a Western-funded NGO. Now, that's not dictatorship. That is direction, that is national pride, that is black consciousness. You say that there's black people who want electricity, and we want it in a nuclear form. Now, if you are now going to say that that's dictatorship, if we are now going to say we want to elect Traore, who is a dictator, but it must be a dictator who has been training with black consciousness. You say, if you are now going to start killing us as black people, we've put you there, we're going to remove you, Traore. They're going to put another Traore who's going to be black conscious, who's going to do what we thought you would do. So that's just my comment and my 2 cents. Thank you.
We really appreciate the comments. We really appreciate the contribution that you have made. We, as the IEC, we are still going to be around. The officials are still going to be around. We're also going to be having your lunch. And more than any other thing, we also have social media platforms. Ladies and gentlemen, you are welcome to make comments on those media platforms, your Facebook, your WhatsApp, and so on and so on, so that we, given that you are restricting you, I want to believe that chances are that you want to say something, but because of the time, these venues are booked, and we can never be in a position of having to, afford each and every one of us a chance to say something. But please, local offices, we have IEC local offices within your areas of residence. Please feel free to drop into our offices. and inquire as much as whatever information that you may need to know. And thank you very much to the rest of yourselves. Thank you for honoring us with your presence and the comments and the questions that you've given us. Thanks to Dr. Rapo for the opening and welcome, for always encouraging us, to be as visible as visible in having to make sure that we strengthen the constitutional democracy. Memahisi, thank you very much for always encouraging us to engage our communities as it relates to civic education as well as voter education. And of course, I'll need to thank Dr. Thokozani, Chilenga-Butao. Thank you for affording us a chance to reflect in the things that you do as it relates to voter education. And also to Date Mudibe, your robustness always encourages us to do things accordingly. And also to our two facilitators, thanks for the input that you've given us. Thanks for the insight that you've actually blessed us with. These are the things that you need to consider as you move forward. We take your input very serious. And by that program director, I'm actually trying to cover the part where you would have said I should do the summation and thank the people as the last part. And ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much for your time as allow our facilitators to, as we descend from the stage. Thank you very much.
If you look at China's unemployment rate amongst the youth, I think it's 5.2. If you look at Russia, it's 2.1. You look at South Africa, it's 4.6. And if you say that the Russians are being oppressed, are we not being oppressed yet because we don't have jobs? 46% of our people don't have jobs. Then if you are saying that a country with 2.1,
thank you, sir.
5.2 unemployment is dictating. That means democracy itself is the biggest dictator. And I'll tell you why. Well, now that the discussion.
Thank you very much
the new government now,
for gracing us with your presence.
The country
Ka
must go
leboha haholo, but Ntate Mpete, re se ke ra o kwalla ka ntle, you had to close and tell us where, if the last item still exists. Ntate, please guide us.
There's no NGO that's going to come. And there's no
Ke
judicial
Ntate Leboha Mpeta, ke
NGO.
raditjhelete wa province.
That is national pride, that is black consciousness. To say that there's black people who want electricity and we want it in a nuclear form. Now, if you are now going to say that that's the
No, thank you very much and
Now,
good
if you are
afternoon,
now going to
colleagues.
say we want to
I think I'm
elect
just going
our
to
youth,
be
we will
brief and thank those that have
change
not
our
been
way of
thanked.
thinking with black consciousness to say, if
Perhaps
you are
to
now
start
going
with
to
our
demonize black people, we'll put
team
you back.
of
We're going to remove
sign language
Butao.
interpreters
We're going
from
to
ND
another
Science.
Butao
Thank you very much, guys.
who's going to be black, but who's going to do what we thought we would do. So that's just my
We also want to thank the outreach team for putting together the program and also inviting all the speakers that we had today. We want to also thank the provincial office staff that is here. And most importantly, we want to thank you for coming. And I can assure you that this conversation is not going to end here. I wanted to use the phrase of clocking it somehow, but I'm not gonna clock it anymore. And Asikoda, so lunch, colleagues, is going to be served at Clover's Green as you exit the main door, which you came through. When you look on your far left, just if you passed, just after passing the Exaro teardrops, you will see there's a big sign there written Clover's Green. They said they're closing at 2. I don't know if they are saying they'll close us in or out, but lunch is served. Thank you very much.
Whatever information that you may need to know. And thank you very much to the rest of yourselves. Thank you for honoring us with your presence and the comments and the questions that you've given us. Thanks to Dr. Rapo for the opening and welcome, for always encouraging us, to be as visible
As others go out for lunch, the PO is asking to take a group photo with the panelists.
Thank you very much for
No. I'll advocate for you, hopefully.
civic education as well as water education. And of course, I'll need to thank Dr. Thokozani, Chilenga-Butao. Thank you for affording us a chance to reflect in the things that you do as it relates to voter education. And also to Date Mudibe, your robustness always encourages us to do things accordingly. And also to our two facilitators, thanks for the input that you've given us. Thanks for the insight that you've actually blessed us with. These are the things that you need to consider as you move forward. We take your input very serious. And by that program director, I'm actually trying to cover the part where you would have said I should do the summation and thank the